Hi, everybody. Welcome to Stratosphere Lounge. I'm your host, Bill Whittle, and it's Indictment Thursday here at the Stratosphere Lounge. I wish they could have waited another 2 days. That would have been nice. You should have done it on April 1st, an April Fool's Day joke. Anyway, we will be talking about this a lot, obviously, and it's a moment. But we'll be talking about that in a minute. The honest truth here is, I'm going to let the feed just sort of seep a little bit, steep, steep. You can let a little bit of time go out just for the people kind of find out we're here and come on board. So until then, we'll talk about we'll go talk about the trivial. Hello, Zachary. Talk about the trivial, and then we'll move from the ridiculous to the sublime, just as a means of warming up the crowd. I've been thinking very hard about this, talking about it forever too. Some kind of a new commentary delivery vector, and now that I've actually gotten this thing off my shoulders, I can start giving some serious thought to this. We talked about this on Monday. Like I said, from the ridiculous to sublime. For some reason or another, I could not shake the idea of doing commentary as the last man in the moon. I just loved it. I think Daily Wire, by the way, has put up at the first and second parts of Apollo 11, what we saw. They've just named it differently. So that's cool. And we'll talk about that maybe a little bit too, the whole moon landing thing, because I haven't posted my right angle for today. It'll be up tomorrow, but it was about, well, we'll get to that in a minute. Oh, and thank you. People are asking how Natasha's doing. She's much, 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 much better. For those of you who are not up on current events, she came back from extended stay in Bali to see her daughter. They're very, very close growing up. And she came back, and then my stepdaughter got sick in Bali. And Natasha came back, and Diana in Bali had dengue fever. So that was fun. She got sick on the plane home. Nothing better than that, by the way. Anyway, I've been thinking about this last man in the moon thing, and I think I found the hook that I've been looking for. I'm going to try it. We talked about this on Monday on the Stratosphere Studio show, and like I said, just warming up here to get the blood flowing before we start talking about the politics, because it's the politics show. But I really had a lightning bolt about this last man in the moon guy who's been on the moon since 1966 or 67 or something, in a self-sustaining nuclear-powered shelter that the Air Force put up there secretly, and so on. And it reminded me of my childhood with my all-time favorite toy ever. I talked about Johnny Astro in the Apollo thing. But Major Matt Mason was fantastic. I just had everything. And so I thought maybe I'll just do it as Major Matt Mason. And I don't remember who it was. It might have been Marisha Dark or G.K. Masterson, but somebody said, why don't you, Major Matt Mason is still copyrighted, and I don't need the copyright strikes. Although whether or not I would get them is another story. Something to think about. But somebody suggested you could call your name could be Major Mason Matthews. Here's the thing I like about it, and that is that you would not only have a lot of nostalgia, which wouldn't mean much to anybody other than people my age, but that's where most of my audience is. Of course, we're dying off at a spectacular rate. But I thought it could actually be funny because I'll give you one example that just made me laugh. I'm sorry, Brew Daddy says, does anybody find a link? If you just go to the Daily Wire channel, either Daily, as Marusha, thank you, Daily Wire or Daily Wire Plus on YouTube, and it'll show up there. So here's what actually struck me as funny. The premise would be that I'm the last man on the moon and got cut off for some reason. Either I'm inclined to go with budget cuts, and so the irony here is, it's like, did NASA fake the moon landing? No, no, they did not. But it wasn't. Was Neil Armstrong the first man to step out on the moon? Unfortunately, no, it wasn't. It was Major Matt Mason, uh, and so the toys were fantastic, and like everything in my childhood was powered by a D battery, the big fat ones, big D batteries. We must have bought those things by the gross, by the pallet of D batteries. And in fact, it's been so long since I've used a D battery, it makes me feel like, oh, they're like the D engines on the Estes thing. Anyway, I digress as usual. But if you look at the toys that he had, this is one great example. Um, the first toy that he came out with that I can remember that had electrical power, and everything cool had electrical power, was something called the lunar crawler, and it had four cruciform legs like this, and they would be offset. Although I could crank them and get it to go loop loop, and so this thing would be like, it would walk on these four legs, and it would go dunk 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 dunk, and it looked really really cool because it was an all terrain vehicle. It's kind of like a legged vehicle, except it was just cool. Dunk, dunk, dunk. And I thought, all right, so what I'll do is I'll model that. I'll put it in the show. I'll make it look much more detailed, like the toy's just kind of a simplified version of this thing. Um, and and then I thought it'd be hilarious to see this guy going across the moon. Major Matt Mason by this time is going to be probably, I don't know, 65, because he's got us. I'll get to that too. So I had this vision of doing this thing in Unreal Engine 5 and having him in this, in fact, very realistic looking lunar rover like this. He's going on this, 4-hour transit of something. And after like 20 minutes, you see it. Good love of God, what were they thinking? My God, this is horrible. This is a horrible experience. Eric says, the question, Bill, is will younger people get the jokes? And the answer is, I don't care. I don't care if anybody gets the jokes. I get them. And it's not going to be like, gee, I can't follow the story because of this. Just the idea that it's just, last time I rode this damn thing, I had blood in my urine for the next 3 days. Who designed this hunk of crap? I like that very much. That was really, really, really cool idea. And so I would build the space station. Everything would kind of mimic him. He had something called the Unitread and Space Bubble, which was like a snowmobile with one big tread on it, and it towed behind it a plastic bubble with a free swinging chair, and you could have one guy would be up front driving, and the other guy'd be sipping coffee in his space bubble. And I love Space Bubble. How incredibly offensive land acknowledgments are. I don't know what you mean by land acknowledgments. Anyway, like I said, just warm it up. Nobody panic here. We're gonna get to the happy news. About this banana republic of ours. So I'm thinking about all the toys he had. He had a jetpack, flying around the moon in a jetpack. I found some really realistic looking, very cool looking. No, I'm not kidding. I don't know what a land acknowledgement is. And I just think it'd be really fun. And even if you don't get it, it's still really cool. So I'm giving that some thought. I found a good suit, and I found a couple phases I like, so I'm in the process of getting those things going. All right, I think we're warmed up here. It's 143 people in YouTube, and similar number in smaller number, but a number still in Twitch, and I don't care. I really don't. At this point, I'm more worried about what I say rather than how many people are watching it. Okay, so this is March 30th. of 2023, and the republic of ours gets more banana-y every day. Um, Today we found out that Knight's Edge wants to know, how do you steer with one tread? Don't ask stupid questions. Knights, shut up, he explained. We don't. We just go around the moon in a straight line. That's what it's designed for. That's a great question. Never thought about that. Damn it. That'd be another thing too, by the way. Wait. Oh, I forgot. I'm sorry. I know this is unforgivable. But that's actually a damn good idea. Is that he's driving the unitread out there, and he's like, God, this thing won't turn. To get out and haul it around and plunk it back down again. That kind of stuff is funny to me. And I was thinking, all right, so the guy would be 100 probably by now, unless of course he was in a state of suspended animation. And I did a lot of research into actual genuine. It's not suspended animation. It's basically taking astronauts, putting them into a medically induced coma, electrostimulating their muscles so they don't atrophy. And I thought, okay, keeping their temperature down. If you take they've taken dogs down to a core temperature of, I think dogs run a little hotter than we do. They've taken a dog down to something like 67, 68 degrees instead of 98.6. That's cold. And respiration drops, and adding sulfur dioxide of all things. You put sulfur dioxide in the mix, in the gas mix, you slow it down to about 4 beats a minute. It works. I did a ton of research on this for the Aurora script I wrote back in 2005 or 6. It's pushing 20 years now. Anyway, so for Major Matt Mason, I thought the thing to do is, okay, so what's the look I want? And I realized, I know exactly what I want. I want the inside of this thing to look like the inside of the Jupiter too. So when it's time for him to go into suspended animation, he goes into suspended animation once a week, let's say, right? He's still waiting for rescue. His only hope now is Elon Musk. Hello, Brazil, Tunutri. So bending this as we go, mind you, as well, like talking about it. So he's been stuck on the moon since 1966. There was enough supplies for 4 guys for many years. It's nuclear powered. He makes his own water. He's got organic matter, which has to be preserved. He's got this giant batch of organic matter, and he dips up like a ladle of this, goes into this giant vat of this horrible, corpse paste kind of gray sludge, and it says organic matter on it. He scoops it out, pours it into the top of this Mr. Coffee looking kind of thing, and then out come his dinner, which would be a steak pill with mashed potato pills, and you got a little apple pie pill. They were selling this for real when I was a kid. They were saying, in the future, you have all your meals will be condensed down into a single pill, and it'll taste exactly like steak, except chalkier and somewhat smaller. So I find all this stuff cool. But what I want to do is, okay, so he wakes up every week, he checks the news, he's trying to figure out, what the hell's going on. And when it's time to go back into suspended animation, I've got a fantastic, really accurate Mercury astronaut suit. Now, for those of you not up on your history, if you ever saw The Right Stuff, there's a shot of this Mercury 7 walking down this corridor or something. The Mercury suit is just plain gorgeous. It's mylar. That's where the Lost in Space suits got their thing. It's just mylar, and it's really tight fitting. Helmet's tight fitting too. It looks like Major Matt Mason. So he's got his mylar suit on. He's got his mylar gloves on, and he gets into this vertical plexiglass thing, and it just closes like that. Get a theremin, get some theremin sound, and he just stands there like this and closes his eyes just like Will Robinson did, and then actually, the more I think about this, the better I like it. Actually, the better I like it. Then I would get that Lost in Space music, da da dum, da da dum, da da dum. And now if I could only find a way to resurrect the lamented ghost of Dick Tufeld, who was a great, 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 great voiceover guy, and was the voice of the robot, and also did the last week, as you recall, and I'll use that too. By God, I'll use that too. Last week, as you recall, and when he fires up the lunar crawler, it's open. It's an open thing. You just sit on it. He climbs up this thing, hops into this thing, sits down, straps himself in, and then starts, he's talking to the machine through his radio. He's talking, and it'll be like, he'll have a switch, and he'll flip this one switch, and he'll say, atomic batteries, power, off, power. And then there'll be like turbine RPM, and then that'll go to green, speed. So atomic batteries to power, turbine to speed. Let's get this lunar crawler out of here. I think I'm really starting to love this idea. Okay, so he goes to the hibernation chamber, and this is all a great, it's got nothing to do with the colonies, but it's workflow and, technology building. And it's a gimmick. I would never accuse the future ruler of Earth of having a gimmick, because he's so far beyond all of our puny Earth-like attempts to understand his motivations. But works well for Doomcock, and it works well for Drinker, and it works well for a bunch of other guys. All right, so anyway, that's enough of this. Now it's time for us to do the segue. So as I was saying, it's the 30th of March of 2023, and Donald Trump, twice elected president of the United States, in my opinion, has been indicted. Before I go much further, I saw somebody say misdemeanor charges. Is this a felony if he's convicted of this? Not that it matters. I'm just curious. So this is what happens when you are in trying to govern what was once the greatest republic in the world, and it's still the greatest republic in the world. It's just everything else is they're trying to make it a felony. Okay, well, they have to try and make it a felony. That's fine. That's just fine. I'm sure I'm not alone here, but here's how it goes. If you children want to go down this road, okay. If you have, and it's well after the statute of limitations, all right, I don't care if it's felony or not. If you children want to go down this road, you've gone down every other road, you might as well go down this one, right? We know that none of this means anything to you. We know that the Constitution means nothing to you. We know that all this. You say, well, he's guilty of this. Yeah, even if he was guilty of a major crime, then it has been one of the salient qualities of this country that we don't go after presidents after they're out of office, right? So they want their perp walk, and Stephen Colbert will have his moment in the sun. And I hate that miserable son of a bitch with all the atoms of my body. I can't stand that miserable bastard Stephen Colbert. I just freaking hate him. So I think what Donald Trump should do is, but they want the picture, they want the perp walk. They're like little kids. They're rolling down on the floor. They're like, they're just, ooh, I want this. Well, you can't have it. Well, I want it. Hey, you know what, kid? Make all the fuss you want to, eat all the sugar you want to, do all of the things you want to do. Just go right ahead and knock yourself out, because this is war. The whole Mar-a-Lago thing was war. I've not been shy about this. I've not been advertising it either, because I really, I genuinely believe in Reagan's 11th commandment. I thought, and I still think, that from a purely practical point of view, I think that Ron DeSantis would make a better president than Donald Trump. from a practical point of view. I think he'd be better at governing, and I think he would be a lot less prone to, you know, the things that Trump does. But after this, I don't care. I don't care about any of it anymore. I really don't care. Now, the only thing I care about is getting Donald Trump elected and cleaning out this entire septic, infested, infected tumor that has become Washington, D.C. They really should rename the Capitol. I should have done this a long time ago. They should rename the Capitol Arnoldville, after Benedict Arnold, because having George Washington's name on what goes on in that place is a yet another disgrace. As Jason Tipton said, this is third world stuff. It is third world stuff. Okay, all right. So you want to do this? This is it. For me, we've talked about this 100 times. For me, this is like we send medics out to take care of these wounded Japanese soldiers, and they drop the white flag and they open fire with machine guns. Okay. We watched Barack Obama on television, basically sell out his country, and Ukraine might add, by the way, by saying, oh, well, if Vlad doesn't do anything embarrassing like invade Ukraine or something, then after the election I'll have more room to maneuver, and we'll take out some of these missile defenses and all the rest of this deterrent that we put in there. And the puppet president says, I will inform Vladimir. Okay, it's on camera. It's selling out your country's interest in order for you to be reelected. Ted Kennedy did the same thing with Reagan. When Reagan was elected, Theodore Kennedy, senator, basically got in contact with the Soviets and tried to figure out a way to make sure that this didn't happen. He thought Reagan was more of a threat than the communists were. All right. We had a discussion about this. Where was it? It might have been on one of the right angles, and it might have been backstage. But in any event, the first thing that comes to mind is there's a lot of this going around. People saying, well, there's no point in voting anymore because the 2020 election shows you can't win no matter what. And I think the point is, who did I hear this from? I don't think I saw it somewhere. Yes, California, you can count on California being, well, first of all, it's going to be blue anyway, but you can count on some real shenanigans going on in a large number of states. However, that doesn't mean you shouldn't vote, because a lot of people sat this one out. A lot of people sat out the 2022 midterms, and they're sitting it out. They go, well, it doesn't make any difference, or I've got a problem with this guy. I don't really like him. He's not really perfect. We've talked about this 100 times. The Democrats vote for the brand. Now the brand is Banana Republic policies, economic ruin, open borders, meaning no longer having any sovereignty, open treason, incompetence, and more corruption than I've ever seen in my life. If Donald Trump is indicted and charged for this nothing, then I've wanted Hillary and Obama and especially this Biden crime family to go to jail. And if this is something else they want to break, the way they broke the filibuster, the way they broke the nuclear option, the way they broke every other tradition that's kept this country more or less civil in terms of politics, all of the gentlemanly things that are designed to make politics among people who disagree with each other more or less civil, Tip O'Neill, Ronald Reagan civil, then you want to smash all of those things, they're smashed. I can't unsmash them, they're smashed. And since they're smashed, they're gone. You can essentially restore them, but that is a long-term process. Right now, it's a question of what do you want? And right now, I want revenge. That's what I want. I want revenge. I'd love to put a fig leaf over that. But I just, that's what I want. I want them all in jail. I want them in jail. I want justice done in this country. That's what I want. Um, Cody Fett for Super Chat. Hard question. How do we know that Trump will clean everything out when he had all the opportunity in the world to do it before and didn't? He had the motive to clean things out too and didn't. I think that's an excellent question. I think it's an excellent question. And associated with that question is it was Donald Trump who basically put down, stay with me now, Trump fans, because like I said, I'm at the point where now it's like, I don't care. If I have to carry him to the White House, I'll do it. Um, and so the question is, okay, why didn't we get more done when he was president the first time? And I think the only answer that makes sense to me is he was running against insiders. But I don't think Donald Trump had any idea of just how far these people would go. So from before he was sworn in, you've got these bogus Russia charges issued by Hillary Clinton because Hillary Clinton did have treasonous business relations with the Russians. See, this is how they work, and it makes a lot of sense from a purely scumbaggy kind of point of view. If I'm about to be accused of being a child molester, then I'm going to accuse the person who accused me of being a child molester too. I'm going to get out there first. My charges are going to go first. I'm going to have all the news behind me. So most people will hear me accusing them before they accuse me. And then if charges do come against me being a child molester, then I can say this is just merely revenge. The child molester is trying to get back at me. See how it works? It's really, really, really filthy. It's filthy business, and that's what the Democrats have taken this country to. They've taken it to filthy business, and put aside all of the moral things, right? Put aside all of the not that they're not important. I'm saying just to try to make a sense out of it, even for San Francisco is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. There are gangs that are openly walking down the street in broad daylight with baseball bats, and every time they see a parked car with something in it at all, like a duffel bag, they simply smash the windows and take it. And when the police cruise by, they say, well, what are you going to do about my stuff? We're not allowed to do anything. We're not allowed to arrest them. We've been told we cannot, we don't want to provoke the community. Okay, all right. So I think Trump went expecting to run into the kind of things that you would run into if you were a CEO taking over a badly run hotel, right? I really think that's it. I think he went in there thinking that, all right, we just need to replace some people, put some good people in there, and it'll fix itself. That's how businessmen work. That's what my dad did. That's how my dad made his name as a hotel manager. He took a property in Bermuda, the Carlton Beach Hotel, which was not doing as well as it should have. He was, I don't know, let me figure this out. Yeah, he was 38, and he went in there and turned the hotel around, fired these people, promoted those people. That's what I think Trump thought he was dealing with. TNT Cycles PDX says 3 years of being bootstringed, he had to learn who was in the swamp. Exactly. He thought that this was going to be a personnel issue. And nobody was prepared for how bad the rot had gotten, especially him. He went in there very early, like within the first, out of my couple of weeks, I think, after he was president, sat down with James Comey, had a discussion with Comey, and basically said, all right, look, I don't agree with you on a lot of things, but you're going to run the FBI. Yes, sir, I will. All right, then you can stay. Right? He didn't want to go in there like a bull in a china shop and just smash everything. And I believed him in 2016 or 2017. I completely believed it. All right, he's doing minimum consternation. But he didn't realize this isn't a personnel issue, and it's not even a party issue. This is a guy who went to Washington thinking that he might have a couple of basal cell spots on his arm and neck and skin, and thought we might have to, a couple little surgeries and stuff. We'll freeze most of it off with nitrogen, but the bigger ones we'll have to basically just have to cut them out and stitch them up, and they'll heal. All right, so we got some work to do. And he got there. That's what he was expecting, but he didn't expect to get there and find out that the entire body was just riddled with stage 4 cancer, and that we were talking about from the instant he got there, he should have been in the most aggressive treatment mode ever. But I'll tell you one thing. He's not. That's not going to happen again. The DVC easy. These are the kind of things I just love. Mythbusters showed that bulls don't smash china shops. They're quite agile and graceful. I didn't know that. How about a rhino in a china shop? So this is how they want to play it, and we keep thinking that we're dealing with political opponents. And I don't like talking like this, and I like thinking like this even less. We're not talking about political opponents. We're talking about ideological assassins. This country is all that stands in the way of aristocracy, and it has been standing in the way of aristocracy for 250 years, and it's got to go. And they know that they couldn't come at us with guns because we got the guns. So here we go. Okay, all right. I just wonder if people are going to forget, I mean, I wish this had happened 2 weeks before the election. Big House says we're too stupid to accept their declaration of war. And I'm going to disagree with you on this, Big House, not because I want to split hairs with you or pick nits, but because I think it's really important that we understand what's going on here. We're not too stupid to accept that they're political assassins. We're too decent to accept that. We're not too stupid. We see it all the time. We are too decent. We cannot get our heads around the fact that the people who are now running this country are determined to destroy it, and there is no other explanation for it. They're not trying to modify it. They're not trying to take it left. They're trying to destroy it. You have these open borders in the South. Look, when I say forget about it, not that it doesn't matter. Obviously, it matters a lot. But we're focusing on things like 250,000 illegal immigrants every month or week or day now, whatever. But in addition to all of this, right, we've got this fentanyl epidemic in America. Where does the fentanyl come from? The fentanyl comes from China. China ships the stuff in to Mexico. They mix it in. It's a deadly poison, and China is supplying the poison that's being used to kill the people in our inner cities and create more not only death but more disunion, more antagonism, all of this stuff. It just, at what point do you say, when we talked about the NFL and Colin Kaepernick and taking a knee and all the rest of it stuff, why would they do something? Why would the NFL do something that destructive to their brand? Don't they realize they're going to lose so much money? And then finally I realized they wouldn't do it if they were losing money. They're doing it because their money is coming from someplace else. If they were losing money, they wouldn't do it. If I'm China and I've got no morals and absolute power, and I'm looking at trying to defeat a country that's got 15 times my defense capabilities, right? If I'm determined to, and the rest of the world too, by the way, the effed up countries in the world, then what do? Well, I can't go to war with them because they'll kick our asses. So while we're working on all this other stuff, we're going to make sure that we're going to spend big money in cooperation with other people who don't like the United States and see it as an impediment to their dreams of world domination. And we're not only going to make the military so woke that they don't want to fight, or so fat that they can't fight, but basically we're going to destroy everything that patriotic Americans believe in. And one of those things is football. I'm just using it as one example. There's hundreds of examples of this. It's not an accident to me. I don't think it's not an accident that the wokest company in America is the Walt Disney Company. I don't think that's accidental. I don't think they just roll 2d12 and, I guess it's going to be Disney. I think they targeted Disney on purpose. I think they targeted Disney on purpose because they knew that Disney represented everything that was good about America. That signature name, that rounded D of Walt Disney's signature, meant wholesomeness. It meant America. It meant everything good. It's the happiest place on earth. I saw Glenn Beck speaking live. He was really terrific. I got to introduce him, and we had a lot of fun that day. But one of the many things he owns is the prospectus, that Walt Disney's prospectus for Disneyland, trying to get investors. And it says right in the prospectus, I think on the first page of this perspective, what is this place? Well, this is a place where people are going to go and they're going to learn about American values, and they're going to appreciate the fact that they live in the greatest country in the world. That's what Disney put on the front page of this thing he was using to fund Disneyland. And all of his movies and everything else. In fact, Disney was so wholesome that it became kind of a purgative, right? You just, it's kind of a Disney kind of a movie. It's rated G. So they go for Disney because it's the pinnacle. I'm working my way around trying to just collate things in my head. But this business it's like part of what I was talking about when I was talking about they're trying to break the truth. Why are they making this fight? Why are they deciding to fight and die on the hill of transgenderism? Right? There's many advantages for them, right? First of all, you get to sterilize more people. That's in the advantage of our insect overlords in Davos. And you get to make victims out of white kids, right? They get to be victims too now. And you get to destroy the moral base. You get to have drag queens going down the aisle in a Catholic church, and you get to watch that alone is enough to make you stand back and just paint some blood over the lintels of your house and avert your eyes so that you don't turn into a pillar of salt. But it's not just that. That's not the problem. The problem is not the drag queen walking down the aisle of the church. The problem is the entire congregation standing up and applauding for it. That's what that's about. So the reason that they're fighting the trans issue so hard is they're trying to break the truth. They're trying to break the truth. This is what Martin Amis wrote about in Koba the Dread, one of the many books I read many times. And one of the 3 books I used most often for Empire of Terror. He coined the term. He said that Stalin and the communists were trying to break the truth. They convinced themselves that they could by force of will do things that were not possible. We are going to make the Soviet Union into an industrial superpower. Well, that's going to take 20 years. No, we've got a 5-year plan. We've got a 5-year plan. 5-year plan we've just enacted. And now that we've got the 5-year plan in place, Stalin says, let's do the 5-year plan in 4 years. Ooh, they're not kidding, these Soviets, right? He broke the truth. If the country was starving, then kill the farmers. Does that make sense? No, it doesn't have to make sense. Making sense means it's not true. I'm not saying the left is going to succeed in this. I'm saying this is their objective. Their objective is to break the truth. When you look at this trans thing, right? What is it about? I'm not talking about trans people. I'm not talking about trans rights. I'm not talking about what they want. I'm not talking about any of that stuff. I'm on a couple levels above that, right? What is basically going on here? They have taken the only obvious, universal, clearest, simplest, and most obvious biological truth that is available in the world. The biological truth of every species on the planet, male or female, well, every advanced species on the planet, which is probably why they're having so much problem with it. Male or female? It's a male dog, female dog. It's a male. It's a male sparrow. It's a female sparrow. This is a binary distinction. It's the only binary distinction. There's no binary distinction between how smart you are or what your skin color is. We're not black or white. It's not like I'm a black person is coal black and I'm a white person is Snow White. Everything, height, intelligence, speed, strength, longevity, all of it is on a spectrum. All of it, except for one thing, the only thing in biology that's not on a spectrum. The only thing in biology that is in fact binary, and that is your sex, your biological sex. All these terms are so badly confused and polluted rather. I can't, gender. It's like, we know what we mean. There are males and females. And the reason that they've chosen this is because if they can get you to take a knee on this one, then everything after this is a piece of cake for them, right? They're not working their way up the ladder. They've been working their way up the ladder for the last 40 years. Now they are at the pinnacle. They are taking the most obvious truth that is available to human beings' eyes. You know that old saw, who are you going to believe, me or your own lying eyes? Well, there you go. They're going to talk you into believing that your own lying eyes are lying to you. And this is why they absolutely are going after this, because if they can get you to accept the fact that men can be pregnant, then there is no truth. And if there's no truth, then there's no justice and no law and no anything else. This is why they're fighting here. They're trying to destroy the truth, trying to break it. And user you know who, clever name, 2 + 2 = 4, exclamation point. No. 2 + 2 = 4 is a dog whistle for white supremacists. It's racist, and it's part of the patriarchy as well. You may think that 2 + 2 = 4, and that may be your truth. And that was I should have seen this coming. I mean, when people started saying, well, Mike, that's your truth. No, we should have stopped it right there. Boom. Well, you say that we've been to the moon. Well, that's your truth. Say, no, it's the truth. I have an opinion about the truth, and you have an opinion about the truth. We can argue about opinions, but something actually did happen. There is, in fact, truth. They don't believe that. They don't believe it. They think they can wish themselves into everything. And the proof of this, if you want little pieces of proof that they believe, they actually in their heart of hearts believe what they're saying is possible, then all you have to do is look at Dylan Mulvaney. For those of you who may not be up on current events for the last 6 months or so, this is a gay man, young man who was a Broadway singer, just completely over the top, caricature. And he got famous with his, days of girlhood, day 26 of being a girl. So we all know who Dylan is, and then big money got behind Dylan. The #1 talent agency in the world got behind Dylan. He got to meet with the President of the United States. He's going to be Woman of the Year for sure. And all of this stuff is predictable, and it's powered by big money up on top. But. Recently, Dylan Mulvaney put out a video that was not quite coming out and saying it in so many words, but pretty close to that. And he was basically saying, so I look fabulous. I've never looked better, the big face reveal with the, I don't even know how much the makeup artist must have cost on a situation like $2,000-3,000, I would think, for just a makeup artist. Comes out and does all this, and here he is. He's got as female as he's going to get. He's as young as he's going to get. He's as good looking as he's going to get. He's as famous as he's going to get, and he's as rich as he's going to get. He is at peak Dylan, right? Peak Dylan. He knows it, and he sends out these last couple videos are, I've been so busy and I've been running around doing all this other stuff. But boy, I just think it'd be really time for me to settle down and become and become a housewife. And I don't understand why nobody's hitting me up. I don't know why I'm not getting offers. This is the evidence, right? This is the evidence. It's like, he's Dylan frickin' Mulvaney. He's the most famous woman in America. And no one wants to date him. Because he really genuinely believed that if he had these surgeries, he would really be a woman, and that meant that straight males would be interested in dating him and marrying him. And now, the great smashing ball of reality has hit this guy right square in that brand new face of his. Boom. What do you mean I'm not getting any dates? I'm Dylan Mulvaney. Yeah, we know who you are. We know who you are, and we know what you are. And by the way, if it weren't for like Jeffrey Marsh, who's actually trying to just what he's doing with his private Patreon for kids, that guy's just plain evil. But if Dylan was just Dylan and it wasn't all of this power and money behind him, I don't care. I genuinely would like him to be happy. I just don't care what he does. But this isn't about that anymore. And so they're trying to talk us insane. And this is where our hope is, right? We all look around at all of this destruction and all of this catastrophe. I genuinely want him to be happy. That's not a lie. I genuinely do. I just don't want him to take the rest of the freaking world down with him by normalizing the bulge and all the rest of these idiotic things that he does. Who is Dylan? Catherine, you got a rough and I'm not sure you'll want to go to Dylan Mulvaney is the most famous trans person in America. And now, after all the money, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of surgery and big money, he's met with Joe Biden, who's called it a crime. It's cruel, Biden said, what DeSantis is doing in Florida by denying kids the chance to get the health care that they so desperately need. It's cruel, says Biden, that DeSantis and the Republicans are denying children life-saving health care. That's how he put it. It's a verbatim quote, I think. What do you mean by that? Well, the state of Florida said, we think that maybe you should have to be 18 before we start hacking off parts of your body. It's just an idea we're tossing around. So, okay. So that means that Biden, the Democrats, all of the woke, all of this stuff, also including Schwab and Soros and China, and all of them want this guy to succeed because they want to break the truth. They want to destroy everything. Everything. Forget about destroying the Constitution. They're trying to destroy biology. They're trying to destroy everything so that you will feel a state of despair and hopelessness. And it works. It works great. So that's why we're here. We're talking about, I noticed that Lady Hawk in Twitch said, talking about Jazz, this, I forget the last name, it's a fairly young person who was transitioned from a boy to a girl and has become kind of one of the golden poster childs of the trans movement. And again, on every TV show there is, walks out on stage, thunderous applause. And now videos have come out basically saying, him saying, I don't feel comfortable. I don't know who I am. I can't find my own body. Can't find your own body anymore, Jess, because your own body's been mutilated. And the person who did it to you was your mother. She wanted to be special. She wanted to be... What that mother did with Jazz is exactly like we're watching the worst of, I'm not saying everybody's like this, but it's like watching the worst of the beauty contestant mothers, These mothers that put their little 4-year-old girls into these real sexy outfits and spend $8,000 on their makeup and costumes and get them out there doing all these other things. And they're the ones that are trying to, it's the moms that want to win the beauty pageants. They're choosing the daughter as a proxy. The little kid's just an avatar for them. They're sick people. And now this person who's the pinnacle, right? This Jazz. I don't feel comfortable. I don't know what's going on. I don't feel myself. Well, Jazz, for you, I genuinely feel sorry. Whatever Jeffrey Marsh will never feel sorry for, Dylan is a child. He's got even before he was famous, when you look at him he's not just a child, he's an attention whore as well. But that's what children generally are. He did like The Price is Right or something years ago as a male. And he's running around the set, jumping up and down. It's like watching, it's like if you're a fan of Mad TV, it's like Stewart. Look what I can do, Okay. So all of this stuff is together, and now they have indicted a former president of the United States, and they think that they can beat us into submission, and they're wrong. Marisha says the best way to hurt a narcissist is to ignore them and pretend they don't exist. Apply your same tactic of we don't think about you at all. Yeah, I was saying before that when get into argument with people from China or whatever, about how awful America is. I've done this 3 or 4 times. Yeah, well, after you've trashed America for the last hour, you want to know what we think about China and China's politics and China's art and culture? Yes, I want to know. Well, we don't think about it at all. It doesn't cross our minds. We don't wear T-shirts with Chinese characters on them. We don't listen to Chinese bands. I couldn't tell you who the #1 Chinese movie star is. I can give you the name of somebody like Jackie Chan, but he's, I think, from Hong Kong. So the only Chinese movie stars that I could mention are the 1 or 2 that have become famous speaking English. We don't think about you at all, ever. You don't cross our minds. But that doesn't work against this because this isn't a passive argument. This is a it's Cthulhu, man. It's like this, watching this whole thing, this indictment, it's like watching these tentacles coming up the beach, It's like they're coming, these tentacles just coming out of the water, just grabbing people and pulling them in. It's like the Watcher in the Lake and Lord of the Rings. No, it's time to start hacking off limbs and stuff. But again, it's like it seems so hopeless. But we have the redoubt of reality, the fortress of reality. That's our wall. That's the wall we're behind. We're on the other side of that wall from these people, and that wall not only will not be breached, it cannot be breached. The truth is the truth is the truth is the truth. You can fight it all you want to, and you can try to break the truth and talk people into being insane and start a gigantic mass psychosis event, which is exactly what's happened. But the reality is going to still be there when it's all over. And you can't print money forever. And you can't get people to care about something they don't own as much as they care about something they do own. And all the rest of this stuff. So, Marisha said, warned about people about this when Greta first appeared. Thunberg, obviously. You want to get rid of her, ignore her, and then let her fade away. Same with Dave Hogg. Attention makes these literal poster children so powerful. Yes, there's some truth to that, but the issue again is we don't get to ignore them. The media puts them everywhere. It is to some extent true that the longer that we continue to make a fuss about it, the longer it remains a news story, but we're not promoting them. They're promoting them, and they're promoting them to everybody. So, like as the waves, that's an interesting comment, an interesting name too. And in Twitch says the COVID mass hysteria was overlaid onto the cultural hysteria already fully active. Yes, and the COVID experience has emboldened these people. I think it's emboldened them enormously. I think that the insects in Davos and Soros and all the rest of them, I think they were amazed at how compliant we were. Amazed. I think they were genuinely amazed. And I think they were hoping for, I think they were hoping that somebody give them $20 for this vase that they found in their attic, and somebody gives them $400,000 for it. I think that they're just astonished at how easy it was and how much they could get away with and how many tracks they could cover. I mean, after all, a person was murdered in front of our eyes. One individual with a name was murdered in front of the entire world. Nobody did anything. No investigation, no follow-up, no trial, no reporters going out for that Nobel Prize. If we had any kind of a news media that was not in, it's not longer a question of personal ideology. This is big money and big future, big forces at work. But any investigative reporter worth a damn could win a Nobel Prize by doing a story on what happened to Jeffrey Epstein. The reason that that's not happening is because nobody will publish it. You'll be fired for that. So, okay. So, we knew he had dirt on the Clintons. He had evidence, hard evidence, and not only hard evidence of corruption, which would be enough for conservatives, but hard evidence of sexual, what's the term I'm looking for? Sexual harassment, which is what the left has been, it's been their banner for forever, right? This guy has exploited women, underage women, he's done, and a bunch of them have, including Stephen Colbert, by the way. I was surprised but not amazed to find out that he's one of those people, been on the old Epstein Express. Imagine my shock. And so there you go. What do you do about this? Well, okay. So now we try to stop them. We try everything we do to stop them. We can't. So now it's time for us just to not go away and not go into the mountains. Now it's time for us to close the doors on the bomb shelter, turn out the lights outside, sit down, put on some music, watch some TV, and wait for this fire to burn through. This is what Noah must have felt like, you know? It's like, okay, I've been trying to convince you people that if you keep doing this, bad things are going to happen. And I've tried my very best to make sure that you knew that, but I can't stop you. That's how humans are built. So, close the doors, my boys. Close the doors. Throw a big old wooden beam across them, because once the water starts to rise, they're going to be desperate to get in here, and they're going to be talking about how wrong they were. It's too late now. We can't help them anymore. They're going to get what they asked for. They're not going to get what I want for them. I want them to be happy. I want them to be happy. I want them to live in a world where there's justice and law, and if a Republican president does something illegal, he goes to jail. And if a Democrat president does something illegal, he goes to jail. But that's not the case. And every day it's like, okay, our main objective now is to make sure that we don't fall into despair, give up hope, that we don't disengage completely from society, all of these other things. We just have to say, psychologically, okay, we're just not going to, it's not going to take us. Okay, missed a couple super chats here. Cody Fett says, Bill, leftists talk in the same terms about us. Both sides agree that elections don't work, we can't trust institutions, and that the people across the aisle are pure evil and responsible for everything. It's bayonet talk. Yes, that's true. So the question is, and this is really kind of the question, Cody. Who's right? Are we right because we're born on this side? Are we right because this is our side, so we must be right? Who's right? If the progressives were correct, and progressives taking over cities made cities cleaner, safer, happier, then you'd have to give them a serious look, right? If it turned out that you could have free healthcare that didn't cost anything. I remember the first time I said that. Of course I'm in favor of free healthcare. Who wouldn't be in favor of free healthcare? What kind of a dick would you have to be to say no free healthcare for you? Of course I'm in favor of free healthcare. But single payer health is not free. You can't have 6 surgeons and 14 nurses and all these cardiac equipment and perform an operation that costs $500,000. That's not free. That costs money. So now we have to figure out how to pay for it. So there's no free healthcare. If there was free healthcare, I'd be in favor of it. If the progressives were making life better, I would be, at the very least, inclined to say, well, maybe the world has changed, and maybe the values that we all had did us a lot of good through the first and second revolutions, the industrial era, the agricultural era, and they're just no longer valid. So since the world is changing, then I should change my, then the philosophies need to change too. But that's not what's happening. On the contrary, the more progressive people get, the more miserable they become. And it's not just they're making us miserable, they're miserable. I was talking before about how San Francisco, they're just plain walking down the street smashing windows. And when these liberals who voted for this stuff call the cops and are told, we can't do anything, then they get stuck in that kind of lethal levels of cognitive dissonance. They know that this is a result of what they voted for, but they also know that if they change their mind about this, then they're no longer, it's not a question of they're no longer Democrats. They're no longer people. Politics is their identity. All of their friends believe all the same things. The reason they do all these things, the reason they have a free Tibet bumper sticker on their Prius is because, not because they give a damn about Tibet, it's because when they go to visit their other liberal friends, they want to show them just how down they are with all the right things. So, what do these people do? Strangely enough, they end up leaving San Francisco. That's how deep this is in them. They would rather leave their homes and go live among people who they despise rather than change their minds. So, that's a pretty big kind of a mental illness. Reality will have its way, folks. Reality will have its way, and when reality has its way, it's going to do what reality always does. People are saying, is it going to be brutal? Reality is not by nature brutal. Reality is just reality. Things that are going to happen are going to happen. I don't know how bad it's going to be or how bad it has to be. I don't know anything. I do know that there is a reckoning coming with people who believe that you can smash the truth. You can't. You cannot break the truth. The truth can break you, or you can find a way to live with the truth. And that's what conservatism is living with the truth. People are flawed. It doesn't matter how much you want them to be good. It doesn't matter how much you want them to share. It doesn't matter how much you want them to not compete with each other. It doesn't matter. You can have a philosophy that tells you that, okay, this is what we'll do, and we'll make people that way, but this has been tried forever, always fails. And so you have to ask yourself, what's the emotional motivation for this? Well, it's a lot of things. Just another super chat here from Monk in Training. You said the issue is that we're too decent. If that's the case, how indecent should we be? As time goes on, diplomacy seems to be more overrated. I remember when Trump was elected, I remember saying to myself, I want to see Hillary Clinton in jail so badly, so badly. But this is America. There's no fate worse for Hillary Clinton than realizing she blew this thing that she's been working for her entire life. I don't want to live in a country where we pursue criminal charges against somebody after the fact. And now I just say, okay, you want to break that rule? When they broke the nuclear option, when Harry Reid decided that gentleman's agreement, he needed a vote on something completely forgotten now. So he broke a 200-year-old tradition, and now it's broken. Now we're going to play politics your way. Okay? We've been trying to play nice, and we've been trying to be civil and decent, but it's obvious that you don't not only do you not care about these things, you have contempt for them. So now we're going to be it. We're still decent people, and we're internally decent. We're decent to each other. Somebody, if you treat me fairly and well, I'll treat you fairly and well, and I'll start out treating you fairly and well. But if you start screwing us or screwing me, then we're going to screw you back. We're going to keep screwing you back until you change your behavior. Because if we don't, we'll be screwed forever, and you'll continue to get away with it, and you'll do more and more screwing of more and more people. So it's pretty simple, really. We're going to fight back until you stop. And when it's clear that you've stopped, then that's it. Aesop said, I wasn't against criminal charges, I was against jail. That's kind of what I meant. I actually said, I remember clearly now, I said what Trump should do, this is right when he was in office, early 2017. Trump should launch an investigation, find her guilty of all of the email transgressions and 30,000 or 60,000 emails, try her, find her guilty. Once she's found guilty, pardon her. Maybe not pardon her, because I think pardon actually means that the charge never happened. Commute the sentence, right? Come out and say, well, she's guilty of all these things. She's found guilty in a court of law. But she represents the hopes and dreams of 100 million Americans. It's not my place to shatter that. So, well, she's guilty of these crimes. I've decided to commute her sentence because she's a public figure, and we don't go after public figures in this country because they disagree with us. And we certainly don't go digging for that. That's what I felt before today. But now, it's like, okay, all right, this is what you want. This is what you're going to get. So, please, I ask this at every show, will you please do a game theory like you did on PJTV? Can you remind me of what the game theory you're talking about there, Lamar? I've done about 200 of these things just at PJTV. And Eric says it would be the ultimate humiliation. Exactly right. Trump would be able to say, I've decided, no, this is, she represents 100 million Americans. And I'm not going to put her in jail, even though she deserves to be there. So now I'm going to go into something that I really don't want to go into because it's going to shorten the show by an hour. But I'm going to do it anyway. We have been so beaten by these people. We've been accused of treason by traitors. We've been accused of lack of tolerance by the most intolerant people in the world. We've been called a threat to democracy by the people who are rigging votes, and we've been called science deniers by people who knew full well what the science was and just plain decided to go the other way because they had a political agenda. So when this happens long enough and you get called traitor and all the rest of these things, it starts to make you a little snippy, and then it starts to make you angry, and then it makes you furious, and then it makes you feral. And it's happening to us. We are becoming, I'm not saying everybody, I'm just saying I'm seeing more and more signs of it from people who identify themselves as conservatives. We have become so feral because of what they've done to us. We're so traumatized that we're biting at everything. We've been hit so many times in the face that anytime anybody extends a hand to us, we just assume we're going to get hit again. And I don't have any problem with that. But where we're getting now is, and I'm seeing it more and more, we're at the point now where if Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi stepped outside in the rain and said it's raining, a significant number of us would say, no, it's not. No, it's not. And that is not good. I understand how it works, and I understand why it works, and I also understand that that's their objective, but it is succeeding. We are at the point now where if it has anything to do with them, we just assume it's wrong. And that's not realistic. When we put it, I just know it. I just know this is going to open the doors, and I'm just going to deal with it as long as I can, and then I'm going to hang up the show because I can only take so much of this stuff in any given lifetime. When Daily Wire put up the first of the Apollo 11 series, back on YouTube again. It was about a little over 2 weeks ago. They didn't call it Episode 1, didn't call it Apollo 11 what we saw, Episode 1, We Choose to Go to the Moon. They did something, their marketing team is first rate. They put the exact episode up, We Choose to Go to the Moon, Episode 1 of Apollo 11, what we saw, but the title was, Did We Really Go to the Moon? That's all there was in it. So, when that went up, the first people who saw the video were the Daily Wire subscribers, and the comments were unbelievable. I mean, they were just unbelievable, and I'm very, very grateful for all the kind things that people said. Really, it's just an avalanche of Asaph says I'm describing them. I'm not describing them. I'm describing us. I'm describing some of us, not all of us, some of us. So the comments were amazing, amazing. 2 days later, I went to check them again because, frankly, it was so encouraging to me, and having put all of this work into yet another one of these series and just being so drained and exhausted by it, I just sometimes thought, is this even worth doing? I saw the comments. I thought, oh no, this is what I should be doing. Went back the second time about 2 days after it posted, and I look at the comments in order of posting, and it's, I can't believe you believe this bullshit. I'll look another guy who doesn't even know what time of day it is. This idiot think we really went to the moon. I can't believe this tool is out there saying that we actually went to the moon when it's been so frequently debunked. And there were probably 60 of these before the first one came back was, like the other ones were. So it's clear what happened. Daily Wire put the thing out. Daily Wire fans saw it. They know it's true. They were very, very kind. And then somehow the moon landing denier people, this is what my right angle is about, you'll see it tomorrow. The moon landing denial people came out and they started trashing it. Now, usually comments about me make me really angry. That's why I never read the comments, because I get defensive about it. It's like somebody spits in my face, I generally want to hit them. However, this I didn't take personally. This was bigger than that. And one of the comments that I saw so repeatedly, again and again and again, is, I can't believe that you believe anything that this government says. I can't believe that you would fall for yet another government lie. It's yet another government agency. And lots of those comments, lots of them. Now, the people who are complaining about government lying are generally not going to be progressives. Progressives are in favor of government, and they have no problem with lying. So what I was seeing was a lot of people saying, it can't be true because of the people who say it's true, right? If the government says it's true, it's got to be a lie. And this is where we start to go nuts. Because things have changed. Lady Hawk in Twitch just said, back then we didn't fear that our government could lie to us, because generally speaking, they didn't, right? That wasn't the same government as we have today, but that's not the point, right? That's not the point. The point is that we're starting to lose our minds on this, and I'm saying this because we need to be aware of it. We need to stop it. Right? This is our great strength, is our ability to, number one, have open discussions about things without just simply saying this is it. But we're getting deep in our trenches. I know why we're deep in the trenches. And so any kind of a move that looks anything like not full-on warfare all the time, then so you're one of them, are you? That's a problem. And it's an emotional problem, because when I looked at the ones who were, had enough free time to listen to state why I'm wrong about the moon landing and all the rest of it, when you see the evidence they present, it's actually quite shocking. For example, I saw 4 comments. I'd love to say I'm making this up and that I'm being trolled, but I've seen enough of these people to know that, no, they believe it. 4 people said, now sit, I hope you're sitting down for this. 4 people said that we couldn't have gone to the moon. It's obviously a hoax because we have video of Neil Armstrong coming down the ladder on the moon. So who took the picture? Who was shooting that video? 4 or 5 people said that. That's the proof that we didn't go. Was that there's video of him coming down the ladder, and since there was nobody on the moon already, then who shot that video? And I went, damn it, we didn't think of that. I wish we'd thought of that before we set up the hoax. Looks like we missed that one. And this is what they stand by. I mean, this is it. You can give them all the evidence you want. Yeah, but who shot the picture? And you can tell them, and it doesn't matter, because it's not a rational thing. It's an emotional thing. It's an emotional need. It's a need to be seen as not one of the people who are the dupes. And as a person who's woken up to the fact that I've been duped on a lot of levels by a government that I used to have faith in, I understand the feeling. And I understand the sense that if Joe Biden says, well, we went to the moon, I understand that I don't like Joe Biden, and I want to say, well, if Biden likes it, I don't like it. But that's really the issue, right? If Joe Biden comes out and says, well, we landed on the moon in July of 1969, there are people out there saying, no, we didn't. No, we didn't. It can't be true because Biden believes it, because the progressives believe it, because the government says it. And it's got to stop. Just when I saw some of these, I texted Jeremy, who's traveling around the world now. He just got back from England doing his pre-production for Pendragon. They're doing live action Arthurian legend thing. Now he's off in Bulgaria. He's probably looking at castles or something. But just before he left, I texted him and said, you know, pal, there are times when I really think we're all going nuts. And he said, yeah, we talked about it. And I said, you know what we should do, Jeremy? We should get the #1 moon hoaxer, #1 guy, the acknowledged guy who's the leading voice of the moon landing never happened. And we should do a trial. We should do it live. We should do it live in front of an audience where they're not allowed to applaud or say anything. Sound on them is down, and we do the same kind of jury selection that we would do for any other court case. We find 12 people who genuinely don't know. They're 12 people who genuinely do not have an opinion on it either way. They've heard people saying it didn't happen. They've heard people saying it does. People who are willing to change their mind based on the evidence. And then we ought to just have a trial. And and you bring all the evidence you want to. You can bring whatever exhibits you want to bring, video exhibits, whatever. Bring them in. And I thought that's a really good idea. And he seemed to like it too. And that got me thinking, okay, what evidence would I use, right? What do you say about this? There's 4 or 5 of them that really are the go-to arguments that these people make. The who was taking the pictures is new to me. That one was kind of new. I did see several variations on this one, and that is, I saw this particular comment several times. It's not true because Buzz Aldrin once said to a little girl who asked him when we went, he said, we didn't go. And so therefore we didn't go because Buzz Aldrin said to a 4-year-old girl that we didn't go. I don't see any video of Buzz Aldrin saying that. I suspect it never happened, but that's not the point. The point is, let's say that Buzz Aldrin did say that we never went. And furthermore, let's say that Buzz Aldrin said this on national television, said we never went to the moon. It's all a hoax. Does that mean we didn't go? Well, I was doing this mock trial. I'd say, you a sports fan there? Opposing attorney? What's your favorite sport? I like football. Okay. Well, what would you do if I told you that I had a witness who said that was at the Super Bowl and said that the Eagles actually beat the Chiefs, that the Eagles actually won the Super Bowl, that the whole thing was faked? Yeah, but everybody watched the game. No, you don't understand. I have somebody who was there, who says that they've got evidence that the whole thing was fake, that the Eagles won the game. You would agree that the Eagles won the game then, right? No, it's ridiculous. What if I told you that that it was an assistant coach on the Eagles, somebody inside, somebody with 15, 20 years inside the NFL, who said that the Eagles won the game? This guy's been in the NFL forever. He's been there forever. He's an insider. He's an expert. He said it didn't happen. He said that the Eagles won the game and that Kansas City didn't win. Okay. Does that mean that the Eagles won the game? No, of course not. I'm just arguing with the straw man standing across the room from me here. Okay, what if I told you that the head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs said that we didn't win the game? What if I told you that the head coach made an on-camera announcement saying that the Eagles won that Super Bowl and that we didn't, and that the whole thing is a hoax? Would you believe it then? No. Why? Because people will say things that aren't true because they're either lying on purpose, they're looking for money, they're looking for attention, maybe they're crazy, maybe they're just plain wrong and believe they're right. But one person or 5 people or 10 people, if the entire team said, notice what I'm saying here, I'm not saying that, they're not saying that we didn't cheat, they're saying that they lost the game. If every member of the Kansas City Chiefs said no, that we lost the game, on the scoreboard we lost, and they changed the score afterwards because we have inside connections to the government. I'm not saying that teams couldn't cheat. I'm not saying that referees couldn't be crooked. What I'm saying is that the final score of the game was actually different. You would think the guy's nuts. So you can have Neil Armstrong get up there and say it didn't happen. Just didn't happen. And Neil Armstrong's wrong. He's either lying, he's either got dementia, he's either trolling people, but even he cannot undo the reality of the evidence. So on one hand, you've got 12 launches of a Saturn V rocket, 365 feet tall, every single one of them in public with large, millions of people in attendance. You've got a 360-foot high rocket that goes all the way up into space, disappears out of sight. Happened 12 times. On one hand, that's what I've got. And on the other hand, you got a guy who says that Buzz Aldrin said we didn't go in an interview when he was talking to a 4-year-old girl. Which one of these has the most weight? Because if you're saying that a person said something, I can tell you that the Eagles won the Super Bowl. I can swear to it. I can tell you I have backside information. I can tell you I work for the CIA or the NFL or any of them. It doesn't matter. It happened. You saw it. Eric Blake says, I saw the comment reply with a demand for the link to the video. It turns out he gave a link. That surprised me. Lo and behold, Buzz is clearly saying to the girl, we did go. Clearly the hoaxer just choosing to believe what Buzz said didn't. Okay, so there's that, right? And like I said, it doesn't matter. But Buzz Aldrin could have said it out loud. It doesn't matter. It doesn't outweigh 12 Saturn V launches. And so if I was dealing with this as a trial, and I would be very careful about the tone on this, by the way, very careful. I would rein in all of my main objective would be to win the case. My second objective would be not get snarky, not get wise-assy, not be snippy, not be funny. Don't try to be a dick. Don't try to get a laugh. Just make the case. And so I would say to a moon landing denier, I would say, I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I'm not asking you these questions to embarrass you or to trick you. I'm asking you these questions because I'm trying to isolate where you think this hoax began. So I'm going to start with the ridiculous, but just so we have a line, right? You obviously believe that bottle rockets are real, right? That rockets exist, yes. Okay, good, me too. Do you believe that the V2 rocket, the missile, the A4 rocket that Wernher von Braun did, do you believe that they made 5,000 of those things and that those things actually cleared the pad, flew, up into space, came down, landed in England. Do you think the V2 was real or was that a fake 2? I'm not being facetious. I'm not being snarky with you. I'm trying to, I genuinely need this information. Yes, that's real. Okay. What about, and I just walk them through, right? Redstone flight, suborbital flight. Yes. What they will almost certainly do is they'll say, yes, we made it to Earth orbit. Yes. Earth orbit. Yes, no question. Shuttle's been in Earth orbit. It's just we never went to the moon. That's almost certainly where they're going to land. Because otherwise you can't, you don't even get off the ground, if you'll pardon the expression, right? You can't claim that the space shuttle never flew 170 times or whatever the hell it was, right? So they're stuck with, yes, the Saturn V's were real. Yes, the shuttle was real. Yes, John Glenn was real. Yes, they went into orbit, but they didn't go to the moon. Well, if it turns out that 93% of the total power needed to go to the moon is used to get this thing into Earth orbit, then, see, this is a thought I had recently. Okay. Do you believe that the Artemis spacecraft went to the moon, unmanned, a couple months ago? I don't know what their answer to that. I would suspect they would say yes. Because if they denied that the Artemis spacecraft went, then they're not just denying Artemis, they're denying every single space probe. They're saying that we can't leave Earth orbit. So, did Artemis go out to the moon unmanned? Yes. Okay. So, why is it that there couldn't have been people on board that capsule, an Apollo capsule? Because it's the same vehicle. It hasn't changed much at all. And usually they'll come down to the Van Allen belt. And this is why, I would have plenty of exhibits, and this is why I'd be more prepared for this than anything I've ever done in my life, because the stakes are so high. This is when I would, if we were going to do this thing on camera, then I would get on a Skype call, and I'd get on a call, not with an astronaut, not with a physicist, not with an engineer. I'd do a Skype call, and I would first say, can you estimate what the radiation dose of the Van Allen belt is in terms of, rads per hour? Sieverts, I think, is a method that they're using now. It's a new metric. In other words, how much of a radiation dose does a person take for every hour they spend inside the Van Allen belts? This is the dose. Okay. Then I would talk to a physicist or an astrophysicist and say, how long was the Apollo capsule in that area of radiation in the Van Allen belts? They'd give me a number. Then I would do a Skype call with a radiologist, with a person who treats radiation sickness and radiation poison. I try to find the most expert person I could find on how radiation kills people. And I would say, would a dose of, I'm inventing numbers out of the head, but would a dose of 1.2 sieverts be fatal? No. Not unless they all took it at once. If they took it all in 1 second, it's a different story. But the longer they're in there, the more spread out that sievert is. Over the course of your lifetime, you take lethal doses of radiation during the course of your life. You just spread it out over 70, 80 years. So your actual dose is much smaller. So I would get the astrophysicist to tell me what the radiation exposure would be. I would get a guy who knows orbital dynamics to tell me how long they're in there. I would then deduce what the actual dose to the astronauts was, and I'd ask the radiologist if or not this was fatal. And before I asked him this question, I would add a couple things in my pocket. One of them would be, what is the shielding on the Apollo capsule? I'd ask an engineer about that. How much shielding does the Apollo capsule provide? Well, it cuts the dose by 30, 40%, whatever, right? Okay? And the other thing I would do is I would say, we know that a lunar eclipse, a solar eclipse happens when the moon passes in front of the sun, right? The moon passes in front of the sun, blocks the sun, that's a solar eclipse. That's a new moon. When it gets to the other side, A lunar eclipse is when the moon turns red or disappears because it's going into the shadow of the Earth, right? Yes. Okay, so since the moon goes around the Earth once a month, why don't we have total solar eclipses every single month and total lunar eclipses every single month? If the moon is going around in orbit like this, why is it so rare that the moon actually passes in front of the sun? Sometimes it nicks it, it's a partial eclipse, but why is it so rare? And why is a lunar eclipse so rare? We should see one of these every month. Every time the moon is new, we should see it pass in front of the sun. Every time it's full, it should pass into the Earth's shadow. Why don't we see that? Well, the reason we don't see that is because the orbit of the moon is tilted relative to the orbit of the Earth. It's inclined, right? So the reason we don't see a total solar eclipse every new moon is because for virtually all of them, the moon is either above the sun or it's below the sun. It's on an angle. And the radiation belts are in the same plane as the Earth's equator, but they're not tilted, but the moon is tilted. So when you go to the moon, you pick a time when the moon is as high above that radiation belt as it can be. So essentially, you're not going through the heart of the thing at all. You're simply optimizing. Here's the belts. Here's the moon's orbit. We're going to go when it's like this. We're going to fly above or below most of the belt, right? So now what's the dose? So now, Mr. Radiation Expert, is this dose survivable? Yeah, that's a dose that a flight attendant would get in a year. Flight attendants or pilots are above the Earth's protected atmosphere for much of their lives. The astronauts, Apollo astronauts, probably get about the same dose as a flight attendant gets in 3 years. Thank you. Do you believe that there are flight attendants who have a life expectancy longer than 3 years after they take the job? In other words, are there flight attendants who've been doing this for more than 3 years? Yes. Well, according to this expert, he says that's not a surprise. But according to you, you're saying those people should be dead because I've just shown you that these flight attendants take the same radiation dose that the Apollo astronauts do. So how do you explain that? This is the kind of thing you have to do. And I got such clear ideas of it. One of the things you see a lot of, or hear a lot of is, well, the lines aren't parallel. The shadows are different, right? Shadows are different. Look, the sun is out here, so all these shadows should be parallel, right? Absolutely, yes. Why is it then that these lines the shadow lines are doing that? It's because the light is closer. It's costing. Okay, we can deal with this. So, in order to solve this one, here's what I would do. Let's see. All right. We've got some people standing here in a parking lot. It's a new parking lot, and we're going to put a drone directly overhead, and we're going to look down, and the people are there doing a mariachi dance or whatever. Doing lambada to show that there's no cuts, right? So this is constant motion. So we're now in a simple photographic drone. We're directly above the parking lot and we're looking down. All of these yellow lines are parallel. Can we agree on that? That these parallel lines make up the parking lot? Yes. Okay. Now we're going to fly the drone back down to Earth to 6 feet above the ground. We're going to do it continuously. We're not going to do any cuts. And when you bring the drone down, and the drone is at the front of the parking lot, what you'll see is those parallel lines start to turn into that, right? Because one end of the parallel line is further away than the near end. I can show you pictures of a parking lot from here using just about any lens and showing you that these parking lines converge. But the parking lines didn't move, right? The parking lines are still parallel, right? They just appear to converge because that's what perspective does to things, right? Yeah, let's do something different. Let's have a look at these two straight lines. They look straight on the video now? Yes. Okay, this is with a 200 millimeter lens. Now we're going to make it a 60 millimeter lens. We're going to get a wider angle lens. We're going to just do it live. We're not going to change anything. And as we start to make the angle and angle and angle wider, these parallel lines are going to bend. And I'm going to show it to people. Show it to them. because once you see it in action like this, it's very clear. Everybody knows that parking lot lines look like this, that they don't look parallel, and everybody knows that they have to be parallel so you don't have a parking lot. Right? And Carlos says that the shadows weren't at different angles. Sometimes, look, you have to grant them their premises. You don't have to grant them their conclusions. You have to grant them their premises, because if you say that they were parallel, then they'll trot out some picture and they'll convince you that, they'll convince the audience that you're nuts. So that's how you do that one. One of the most famous ones is just beyond belief, really, is how come the photograph of Buzz coming down the limb, he's in shadow of the limb. He should be pitch black. Why can we see him? That's actually an excellent question. No, that really is. That's an excellent question. If the LEM were out in the middle of space, just 10 million miles further along in our orbit, and the LEM was there, and the shadow was the side with the ladder on, and Buzz went down the ladder off into deep space, then true, he'd be pitch black. You wouldn't be able to see him. But he's not being lit by the sun. He's being lit by the surface of the moon. You see this panorama here? Yes. Why is the ground brighter than the sky? Because it's receiving sunlight and reflecting it back. He's being lit by the surface of the moon. In fact, interestingly enough, here's a little clip I'm going to show you from the guys who make Unreal Engine. Unreal Engine and other game engines have done astonishing amount of works in terms of visual accuracy. For them to create something that looks real, they have to understand how light works. So they decided to create a lunar landing scene. And they modeled the LEM, and they used physically based materials so that they behaved exactly the way they're behaving. And sure enough, Buzz is coming down the ladder. We've got the lunar reflectivity. The albedo is set correctly. And you can clearly see Buzz, but it's not quite right. He's not bright enough. We couldn't figure it out. And then they said, what are we missing? Why isn't this should match the photo. Exactly. That's what we're trying to do. We've got the moon reflecting. We've got our f-stops all right. All our materials are right. The exposure's right. Why is it that he's a little dim? He's clearly there. There's no question he's there. Why is it a little dim? And then they realized that the one thing that's missing is Neil. Neil's white spacesuit was reflecting enough light back to make a difference. So anyway, now let's do some questions, because I'm got it out of my system anyway. I do have to add one more thing, because I know people want me to move on. I just got to get this out of my way. I just got to. This to me is actually, I think this is. I had this argument 10 minutes after I saw these comment streams, and I actually think I've never heard anyone say this. We couldn't have gone to the moon because we didn't have computers. Okay. Stay with me on this, because I think this is actually really quite good, if I do say so myself. Are humans capable of getting a correct answer in mathematics without a computer? If I add 2 plus 2 and it comes out 4, is that as true as if I hit 2 plus 2 on a calculator? Is that correct? Yes. And we can extrapolate that, right? If I took 672 times 496, enter those numbers on my thing, you get a little number on a little display. But it's possible to do that on paper, right? Yes. So computers don't reach a conclusion that humans cannot reach, computerless humans. They just do the calculations much faster, right? Right? Yes. All of these orbital motions of Kepler and Newton and all the rest of them spent most of their life doing the math and adding it up. The computer doesn't do math that's inaccessible to humans. It just does it faster. Much faster. So when you say that we didn't have the computing power to go to the moon, going to the moon, the actual trajectory is actually very simple math. It's just that it takes a little while to do it. So if we had to do this on the fly, you might have a case. In fact, when you had the terminal phase of the DART mission, where they're gotten to the impact point, when they finally got to the impact point, they had to have an onboard computer on the impactor to do the final last minute corrections, because they had to do a lot of math, do it fast. You needed a computer for that. Without it, you couldn't have done it. But if you're going to the moon, and let's say you know you're going to go to the moon, and let's say you've got 2 years to do the math of going to the moon, is it possible to do that before computers? Could Newton have done the math for going to the moon? He could have, because we use his theories in order to do it. And people talk about the slide rule. I bring it out just for fun. Is it just for giggles? Give me 2 numbers. Just give me a couple of 5-digit numbers. Just 2 of them. 6,296 times 720,422. I don't even know if that's a problem you can solve on a slide rule, but you get the point. And just watch them come up with it, right? So we have the time to do the math in advance. We've got the 3-day mission out there to keep checking the math. It's not that they didn't have computers, by the way. They just didn't have the computers that we have today. So if we have time to do the calculations, then the argument that we can't go without computers isn't valid. It doesn't make any sense, because computers don't do math that we can't do. They just do the math that we can do faster. They have to be able to do the math that we do because we program them. They're not accessing information that's not available to us. They're just getting information and results faster based on theories that we came up with without computers, that we programmed the computer to do faster, period. That's it. How did they have enough oxygen for 3 days? I don't know. That's a tough one, all right. How do you have enough oxygen on board a plane to do a 24-hour flight from Los Angeles to Abu Dhabi, nonstop? How do you carry enough oxygen with 300 people on board? No, still in the atmosphere. You get the idea. So they're not in the Soviet Union. There's 10,000 of these things. The Soviets congratulated us. That must have been a tough pill to swallow, but they can't deny the fact that we went. We're going nuts as a society. Flat earthers, moon deniers, all of them. Every day, more and more and more of them, and they're getting more and more angry, and they're getting more and more emotional about it, and we got to watch it. Asaf Indian Twitch quotes one of my favorite movie lines of all time, and that's at the very, very beginning of Apollo 13, and Tom Cruise is out back talking about going to the moon, and he's Jim Lovell, and he says, going to the moon wasn't a miracle. We just decided to go. That simple. Why haven't we been back since? Because we decided we didn't want to, or we couldn't pay for it. And it's not lost information to say that NASA can't go back to the moon today. The information is still there. The expertise is gone. It can be recovered, or you can do it again. By the way, when you watch those 2 SpaceX boosters coming down, nailing the landing site, could you do that without computers? Absolutely not. Not a chance that you could do those without computers. That technology is dependent on high-speed calculations all the time. So, there you go. Sometimes I just have to vent it out. That's all there is to it. All right, let's see what we got here. I'll go to BillWhittle.com and find some questions here. And I must put on the cogitation spectacles, by the way. All right, what do we got? Working. Hopefully these will be shorter. I could do a lot more of them if they were shorter. Got a question from Henry Lumley. I'll try to come back to that. And here's another SpaceX thing. Let's see if I got anything on the Trump thing that I haven't covered yet. I'll try to get all of them. Got a couple here from Bert Hennon. One is, does Trump's indictment simply guarantee he gets elected? I don't know. I've been surprised in the past. It certainly ups my motivation level, and we did talk about that. In the beginning, Bart, so I hope we got most of that covered. Here's another one from Bart. I don't think I've seen Bart before, at least not as frequently as I would have liked. Bill, with the SpaceX Starship test launch getting inevitably closer and the FAA is still dragging its feet on approval, God damn them. Hypothetical scenario, suppose Musk decides to stop all Falcon manned flights to and from the ISS until further notice. Might that not serve as a reality check to government agencies? That's a damn good idea. That's a damn good idea. Pulling Falcon flights would leave the USA again with no way to get people to and from Earth orbit now that Russia is also experiencing issues with their Soyuz craft, and with Boeing continuing to embarrass themselves with Starliner's ongoing failures and delays, Musk really is the only game in town. Thoughts? That's a freaking fantastic idea. That really is. Why not just say, okay, we've jumped through the hoops that you've given us, and we've jumped through them for 2 years. You managed to slow us down for 2 years and wasted 2 years of my life and lives of people and 2 years that we could have been further along. You've done all that, but now it's just plain dragging your feet. So either we get approval for this flight, or we're not taking any more of your contracts. Well, then we'll cut all of your launch licenses. Well, then nobody goes to space anymore. And you try to make that case to the public, because I get the feeling I could, and I don't think you can. I think that's a great, 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 great argument. Okay, you want to make it this difficult? Then I'm going to do a press conference with everybody. I'm going to say, folks, we did the most amazing things. We landed all these recovered, sent all this stuff out there. We got a Starship that'll get us to Mars, but the U.S. government won't let us go because they won't let us go. So we've decided we're not going to do space anymore. I don't know whether they're protecting their Artemis program. I know that they did a flight, and then the next flight is scheduled for 2.5 years later. If everything goes well, we're at the point where we're trying to do a flight every 2.5 days. But we're basically tired of waiting for this, and we're tired of spinning our wheels. So we're taking this company and we're moving to Angola, or some other place that doesn't, it's not determined not to hold us back. Some place that's not determined to make sure we never get into space again. I would do that. I would lay out on them thick. I think it's a magnificent idea. I really do. I think it's great. Commander Carter says, build an island in international waters. This is something I've thought about a lot, not just on this, but just on the whole kind of, God, things are going to hell here so fast. I think that'd be an interesting question. I'm going to take the rest of the questions, but maybe next time. Is it possible to buy sovereignty? That's the entire issue. If you had enough money, you could certainly buy land, but could you buy sovereignty? Could you purchase an island or something like that whoever owns that territory, you give them a hunk of money, and it is now sovereign territory. You get a flag at the United Nations, and you get to send athletes to the Olympics. It is no longer, the Galapagos or Protectorate of Ecuador, I want to say, right? Nope. Can you buy it? I don't know the answer to that. Because that's the question. The question is not buying the land. That's easy. The question is, can you not just own it, can you own it forever? And GK Master says, not really. Sealand tried it. I don't know if I've ever heard of them. And Marusha says, in order to be sovereign, all you need is physical land and the acknowledgement of other sovereign nations. And I think that could be bought, actually. It also says that sea land was technically below water. And that's an artificial floating, I don't know sea land, but I'm assuming it's an artificial nation state. So could you buy sovereignty? That's a really good question, actually. Jose says, that's a clever name. Jose, as part of the lunar landing suit that I'm going to be using, is Jose attachment, Jose B attachment. Do you have to pay taxes, though? No, this is the point about sovereignty, right? You would have whatever taxes you would want. You just, if you didn't want to have taxes, you wouldn't have taxes. You're not beholden to anybody. That's what sovereign means. You don't have to pay anybody. It's yours. You govern it. No one no one can tell you how to run it. No one can tell you what to do with it. It's your country. That's a great idea. But that really is a great idea. And I really have never thought about that. But that is a fantastic question. Truly is, Bart. If he really decided he'd had enough of it, and I've certainly had enough of it, there you go. A bunch from Eric here, and I'm trying to see which one of these I want to like. There's a question about the Super Bowl ads, but I think we've talked about the transgender thing enough for this episode in the beginning. And then Marusha's got one that looks like it's got something to do with this. All right, so here's one. So the Chinese balloon incident, rating it as it comes to me. And the questions are shorter, by the way. Thank you for that. So here's a left field take on the China balloon incident. Looking at this story, I can't help thinking of all things about another bizarre incident involving a harmless weather balloon in 1947 near Roswell, New Mexico. I actually had that thought myself. Now, bear with me on this. People have always imagined the UFO in question was an alien spacecraft, but I can't help imagining that it was, in fact, a balloon, but a spy balloon from the Soviet Union. The U.S. government told a partial truth, but feared rising tensions, hence harmless weather balloon. Funny how that's what the Chinese are saying now, isn't it? Just a harmless old weather balloon. The Roswell incident is a great example of why I don't believe in UFOs. There's no question without question, there's no such thing as, without unidentified flying objects. We've seen them since we've been in the air. In fact, unidentified flying objects have been reported throughout all of human history. So we need to be careful with our definitions. Most people think a UFO automatically means an alien intelligent craft. No. The existence of UFOs as unidentified flying objects is beyond dispute. The question is, are they little flying saucers with green men in them? And when you see the Roswell, New Mexico now is a gigantic tourist attraction. Well, not gigantic. They've got the little alien, everything's got the big heads and the big eyes. So it's kind of UFO central, Roswell. Because the people who believe that UFOs are alien craft point to it as some of the only physical evidence they have. The argument is that a flying saucer crashed into the ground near Roswell, New Mexico, and pieces of it were recovered. And I've seen it. I'm going to find it. Because to me, this is a good indication. Sometimes a person's rebuttal is, when their rebuttal is so weak, it's actually the best evidence you've got that they're not right. This is the photograph I remember seeing. This is what people claim is concrete evidence for alien craft visiting the Earth. Please don't do this to me again. Oh, there we go. It's worked this time. That's what was recovered from Roswell. I've seen Joe Rogan. I forget the name of the guy's head on, and I admire and like Joe Rogan very, very much. I think he's absolutely irreplaceable and just a cool guy. And I've heard him talking with that guy whose name eludes me. It'll show up in just a second. Claiming that he saw UFOs, he worked on them. He was an engineer at Area 51. He saw the technology and he ran his hand across the surface and watched it levitate off the ground and so on. Okay. But that's something that I could swear to, Bob Lazar. I'm sorry, Bob. It doesn't, you're going to have to do better than this is something I saw. Because if that's the standard we're using, then everything is provable. You know, everything's provable. I saw John F. Kennedy last night with a jetpack holding Marilyn Monroe in his arms. They were both in their mid-30s. I think they'd been genetically restored and so on. Prove I didn't see it. It's not that's not proof. But this photograph that you see is, and people look at the shiny metal substance, and many of them think it's a UFO. It's a flying saucer. It's alien craft, and they believe this because they want to. I want to believe that's the poster in Fox Mulder's FBI office, right? I want to believe. I want to believe too. I really do. But that want to believe is kind of like what we were talking about earlier with Dylan and so on. He wants to believe very much that having facial surgery and hormones and so on and more surgeries to come, he wants to believe that will make him into a woman that heterosexual men will want to date and marry. He wants to believe that very much. But that's not necessarily true. And one of the reasons that I feel that ultimately reality will win is because it's beginning to dawn on him that this is not true. But my point is this: you saw the picture, right? So again, I've talked about this so many times. If you really want to debate something that seems outrageous, grant the premise. Just grant it. Don't argue about it. Grant it. This is photographic proof that an alien crashed into Earth. This material. Okay. So, a couple questions for you. It crashed into Earth. Now, when a plane crashes into a side of a mountain like that, we call that controlled flight into terrain. It means that nothing wrong with the airplane. Pilot just made a mistake. So, was the guy flying this flying saucer? Was he drunk? Was he tired? Was the autopilot off? All of these things that we have with our primitive little ape flying machines are there to protect us from this kind of thing. Was it an engine failure? That'll be my first question. My second question would be, what's the total mass that you've recovered from this? It looks like it might be a pound or two. Even if it's anti-gravity powered, it's got to have enough mass that you can put somebody in it, right? This is it? This is all you got? And then you go to, now, turns out that there are people that made radar reflectors, because we're dealing with the early days of the Cold War. We didn't have the satellites, we didn't have the radars. These were all experimental tests. And this is exactly how you make a radar reflector. As big as you can, as flat as you can, made out of a metallic substance. That's what's going to return the strongest echo. And we're dealing with new technology in the 1950s. So if you ask me which one of these is more likely, whether an experimental radar reflecting balloon that may or may not have been secret, probably was, used to calibrate and test our new radar systems, whether that actually lost buoyancy, as every balloon will do, fell out of the sky, and produced about as much wreckage as a Jiffy popcorn container, or these are the remnants of an interstellar craft capable of traveling, if not faster than light, then certainly, I don't see how you have a slower than light flying saucer. Then, there you go. Which one is more likely? It's not even a question of more likely, right? Which one is believable? If I smash a Cessna 150 into the ground, I'm going to create a lot more wreckage than this. If I take a fabric wing Piper Cub and smash that into the ground, I'm going to have orders of magnitude more wreckage than this. I'm going to have engines. I'm going to have wheels. I'm going to have all kinds of heavy metal things. There's going to be shreds of canvas around that look like this. But I'm going to have actual wreckage. And this is it. Marisha Dark says, Bill, if Lazar is just making it up, then why is he so badly persecuted for what he said? He's just nuts. The government would just renounce him as a crazy person and ignore him. First of all, I don't know what Bob Lazar does, and I don't know how much of the government following him around and harassing him is actually true, and I don't know how much of it is coming from Bob Lazar. Now, if Bob Lazar claims that he worked on an anti-gravity flying saucer, I find that difficult to believe. So if a person's capable of telling that kind of a story with a straight face, adding a couple of, I was followed here, or helicopters followed me there, that's not terribly tough. And furthermore, if he was an actual employee at Area 51, I don't know the history of it, I don't know anything about Bob Lazar, just get that on the table, okay? Just get that on the table. However, if he was in fact an employee at Area 51, then the government would be interested in him because there are a number of top-level government secrets at Area 51, and if this guy's running around and getting on podcasts and being seen by millions of people talking about stuff that he saw at Area 51, just because there aren't any flying saucers there doesn't mean that he could just simply go around talking about what he did see, right? So that's not an argument. It's not even close to an argument. It's the want to believe thing. It's what we talked about with the trans thing. And I'll give you a great example, okay? And by the way, as Joe Flink points out, how's Lazar persecuted? Haven't heard that one. It's kind of tough to say that a person has been suppressed and persecuted by an all-powerful government if they're on the Joe Rogan podcast talking about it. I find that to be a bit of a contradiction. I'll give you an example. I don't know if Phil's... you still there, Phil? Because we ran into this quite a lot as the professional astronomers that we were. Yeah, Area 51, Eric Blake points out, that's where we developed most of our stealth technology. I don't know if Have Blue, the first stealth plane, was out of Area 51. Wouldn't surprise me. They sure didn't do it out of Palmdale, that's for sure. Okay, so here's something that I saw with my own eyes. And not only saw with my own eyes, experienced with my own heart. Okay, this is exactly how it happened. I was probably 14, 15 years old, maybe a little older, somewhere right around there. And on Friday and Saturday nights, we ran the Southern Cross Observatory on the roof of the Museum of Science and Space Transit Planetarium, which is located across from Vizcaya, right next to US 1, and very close to, relatively close to downtown Miami. We were up there one night, and somebody pointed at something and started screaming. Just with excitement. Squealing is probably a better word. Wow. Okay. What is it? And somebody said, look, it's a formation of UFOs. And I looked up into the sky, and I saw 9 or 10 diffuse, meaning not sharp edge, I saw 9 or 10 ovals moving at a relatively high speed in an arrowhead formation. Saw it with my own eyes. And I felt the way you would felt if you'd seen a flying saucer. It's real. It's real. I've been waiting for this my whole life, right? I've been waiting for proof of alien intelligence, has been studying astronomy, all the rest of the stuff. There is the evidence. All these people who've said they've seen UFOs, I now see a formation of these ovals flying over Miami. And how the hell do I explain that? They're in arrowhead formation. So, what do you say about that? I was delighted. I wasn't angry. I was happy. I was overjoyed. I was excited as they were. I really, truly was. And these things got closer and closer and closer to us. And I looked at them and looked at them, and then I saw these long necks coming out of the front, and I could start to see the wings. And it turned out that they were a flock of geese. And geese, certain species of geese, have white bellies and dark wings. And the the light pollution coming up from the ground from the all of the sodium vapor lights and the parking lights, the street lights, all of that, were reflecting off of the white bellies of these geese. And that's all you could see at a distance. But as they got closer and closer and closer, you could begin to see the dark parts of the geese. You could see their little wings flapping and their necks. And I felt miserable. Miserable. And not even thinking, I just said, oh, God, what? No, it's just geese. It's geese. Look, if you look carefully, you can see these are just the bellies of geese, right? You can see their wings. And these people were really angry with me. Now, the big house, not seen the name before, can't recall anyway, asked the question of all questions. See, he's on to me. He's asked the meta question. Yes, they were geese, but were they earth geese? That I cannot confirm. And that, my friend, is what I've been spending my last 50 years doing, trying to confirm whether or not those geese that I saw were extraterrestrial geese or simply earth geese. I know they can't be regular earth geese. They can't be. So it was a great example, not only of other people having the reaction, I had the same reaction myself. I saw it again around the same time. A couple years later, we had a guy who worked at the Miami Planetarium. We used to, because we were so cool, such chick magnets that on Friday and Saturday night, if we're not sitting up there on telescopes, listening to the universal, listening to the atomic clock broadcast from of the universal time on AM radio, I want to say, just sitting up there for, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours and nothing to do but beep, 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 beep. Hang on, guys, this is going to be the hour. Beep, beep. At the tone, 9 hours, 00 minutes, coordinated universal time. Beep, 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 beep. That's what we did. What a thrill. So there was an astronomer there, a bunch of amateur astronomers, and one of them worked at the planetarium, and I liked him a lot. He's a great guy. Cuban guy named Tony, and Tony came in to his work thing vibrating. Dude, what's the matter? I was there. I was out in the Everglades last night. Yeah, I couldn't go. What was it? I saw him, Bill. I saw the UFOs. I saw them. I saw them in the sky. And I can't tell you. They're moving. They're zigzagging, doing all of this stuff. And again, hang on to that thought, monk in training. Again, I thought, really? Thank God. So I went out the next night with him and a couple other people who were there. Went out to see it, right? And then, as usual, I'm thinking, we're going to see him any second now. Because Close Encounters of the Third Kind, I saw when I was probably 16, 17, 18. I was 18. And it blew my mind. I loved it so much. Just loved it. And the whole country was UFO crazy at the time. Loved it. When those things come around the corner, the first time you see them, they go around the corner, the little bend there, and then off into the sky, and the police car follows them out there. I would just took my breath away. Loved that movie. So I went out there expecting to see this, based on what Tony was telling me. So we went out there, and it's getting to be the end of the night. It's probably 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, getting half an hour away from the sky brightening up. And I thought, well, of course it's not showing up tonight. Tony got to see these things. I don't get to see them. I never get to see them. And just as we're getting ready to pack up, he says, there it is. Where? And he points to this thing, and it's a satellite. It's just a satellite. I said, Tony, it's a satellite. He says, no, it's moving back and forth, it's moving. And he worked at the planetarium. We did a show on UFOs. Trying to remember the term. I want to say it's autokinesis. Did a show on UFOs, and normally you have the stars on in the planetarium, so you got 300 people sitting in a dark dome, right? And for this experiment on UFOs making these rapid changes in direction, what we did was we turned off all the stars and we put a little grain of wheat bulb. That's before LEDs, kids. Just a tiny little incandescent light bulb called a grain of wheat bulb because they're about the size of a grain of wheat. put it in the hole in the dome, ran some power to it, hooked it up to the console, and basically we said, all right, we're going to turn on this light, and we want everybody in the audience to watch it very closely. After a few minutes, we're going to start moving this light, and we want you to see if you can imagine, keep track of the direction that it moves. Ready? Okay, go. And so we let people stew for 4 or 5 minutes, something like that. And then we brought a little bit of lights up, and we said, so how many people saw movement? All of them. All of them. I said, okay, well, here's something you might be interested in. Then we turn the grain of wheat light bulb up real high. So that light is wired to the dome. The light didn't move at all. It didn't move at all. What happens is your eyeballs move. You have they tend to drift, and the longer you go without having something to focus on, kind of the looser they get around the gimbals like this. And because you've got no other frames of reference near it, it's called autokinesis. You begin to see motion in something that's not moving because you got no other reference for just you and the dot. And when your eyes start drifting, you start thinking the dot is drifting, but it's not true. And that's what he saw. And I thought he was trolling me. I said, well, I want to see what you came in screaming about. I said, that's it, don't you see it? I said, for the love of God, Tony, you want to believe. You really, really want to believe. Just as a very quick aside, AOC says, I've seen the ISS go over with my bare eyes. There's a great app called I Live and Die by this thing. It's fantastic. They make a great planetarium app too. Go Satwatch, it's called. There it is, upper right-hand corner. Go Satwatch. And basically what it does is it'll show you the position of everything, and this is the eye. Yeah, so it shows you where every satellite is, and you can, and it will show you what's coming over, how bright it's going to be, and so on. So the ISS, when it goes right overhead, is damn bright. It's brighter than Venus. I want to say it's a -4 magnitude, something like that. Those giant solar cells reflecting a lot of light. But yes, Coconut ED5 Winds got to it before I did. He says the coolest thing I ever saw was a Starlink constellation. Yes. Was it Starlink? No. Oh, because those things you can see spreading out on a line. I'm sorry. I was thinking of, what's it called? Iridium. There's something called an iridium flare. Way before Starlink, they put up a series of much, much, much bigger satellites further out called the Iridium system. And it was a satellite telephone network. And because of the nature of the design of the Iridium thing, it had a single solar panel, I think it was oval, and at an angle, but it was completely flat and extremely reflective. And so you could see the Iridium satellites just like any other satellite going overhead, but every now and then, and Go Satwatch would predict them, every now and then, they would be in a position where the sunlight would reflect off of that satellite directly to you, and for about 5 or 6 seconds, those things got to -12 magnitude, which is pushing as bright as the moon. And so you can track the satellite, you want just because you're looking like any other satellite, and then all of a sudden it gets bright. Oh my God, and then it's just gone like that, just like that. That's really cool. Good, really cool to see. Iridium flares. And they'll be up for a while. So if we blow this whole thing and our caveman descendants are out in the sky at night, then we put up something there that's going to get their attention. Okay, let's see here. Jazer McFarlane. Cool name, hi Jazer. That's a very cool name. Never heard that before. Hello, Bill. Safety first has been lip service from every politician and anyone in leadership. I did a right angle segment called the safety cult about my experience that I talked about last time with the how the Thunderbirds looked in 1966 versus how they looked in 2023. And I thought, my God, I must have really imagined it was so much better. Then I found footage of it. It was much better. Much better. To set everyone's mind at ease, they lead with the phrase safety is our priority. I always wanted to believe them growing up, but after I became an adult with a family, I realized doing the activity is far more important than being safe. Yes. John Lovell, Warrior Poet Society founder and former Army Ranger, posted a video called Safety Third I thought that was done by, it may be the same video. I know Mike Rowe did this subject called Safety Third. Number 1 is the mission. Number 2 is the cost. Number 3 is how do you do the mission within budget as safely as possible. When people in power change to safety third, the delusion of absolute safety fades away and you're capable of understanding genuine risks in life. Yes, perfect. Exactly. Perfectly said. Question, how much does it have to cost in order for people to take risk into account properly? How many school shootings does it take for leadership to acknowledge that no one is completely safe ever? And how should you budget your life risk accordingly? Thanks. I love and respect all of you. Thank you very much for that, Jazer. That's a great question and a great subject. I get the exact same way. Roger Ball. Oh, hang on to that, Monk. Now let me deal with that first. I'll come back to this. Because when I was talking, I'm off of UFOs. I want to deal with this now. But we have a super chat from Monk in Training, and a couple of people said, "What about that footage of the UFO taken from the fighter jets? It's something small, low, and hauling ass over the surface of the water." That, I believe, is actually genuinely an unidentified flying object of artificial origin. I don't believe it's from another planet. I believe that they might have stumbled on, or perhaps their perfect pilot vision, damn those kids, caught something that's out there floating around. I suspect it was some advanced form of drone, because it didn't apparently have wings on it. There was one thing that led me to believe that it wasn't very big, however, and this is why I don't think it was big. The most famous, this is easy to find. So one of the most, I'm not saying these guys were fraud, but this is one of the most famous fraudulent pictures ever taken. Yep. Okay. So, oops, come back here, baby. So everybody's seen this. This is why I think that the things that the fighter jets saw was not an alien craft, or I know it was an alien craft. This is called, oh God, why do these things come in so small? It's called the surgeon's photo. It was taken, I want to say, in the 1920s, and it was for the longest time ever listed as the best single photographic proof that the Loch Ness Monster was real. And I'd seen this photo 100 times. And when I was younger, I thought, wow, what else do you need, right? Now, it turns out that this is a fake. And we know it's a fake because the guy who took the picture, the surgeon, son, trotted the thing out and showed it to people. This is years and years and years after it became one of the most famous pictures of the world. So here's basically how it worked, right? So apparently it moved through the water. Now that thing beneath it is a little wind-up submarine. We used to have those toys when I was a kid. That would clockwork submarines in Bermuda anyway. You'd open the top, you'd crank the clockwork, you'd pop a cork in it, and the thing would start going through the water. The dive planes were aimed downward, so on. So this kind of mechanical little boat thing is not uncommon to me. However, back to the point for a change.
Working together, then neither one of us are going to get off this fucking rock ever.
Sorry. Okay. Stop. Just stop. Everything. Stop. I don't like this. Okay. Something's wrong with this picture. And you know what's wrong with this picture? I didn't know it until somebody showed me the fake. This creature is about this big. It's really like this big. I know, I'm sorry, I had the moon video playing. My bad, I didn't realize it at the time. Didn't have these things labeled. So it's about this big. It's like a rubber ducky. It's about that size. So what happens is, when you look at that picture, you think it's real, but the waves are out of proportion. Do one by one this time. In other words, the waves look like ripples because they are ripples. They're ripples. They don't. If that was a full-size monster, the whales would be much smaller. This is why the one thing that looks just awful in terms of movie making are miniature boats, because you can slow it down, but you can never get the water to do what the water is supposed to do. A little splash is very different than a tsunami. You can't fake it. You can't get a big old tidal wave on something that small. So Mr. Batsu says, where's the scale reference? There isn't one in terms of like a yardstick, but I can tell you, looking at the water, that those are ripples and those are not waves. I've seen plenty of waves that don't look like that. Those are ripples. So this thing was wrong scale. Fooled people for 70 years or something like that. Okay, so I think that those things that those guys saw, based on the scale of the water and the fact that they were below them, is telling me that it is much smaller than something big enough to hold a couple of people in it. But I think they definitely saw something real. They got good footage of it. It's the most compelling UFO footage I've ever seen, but it doesn't make the case for it being alien craft. It does make the case for hopefully the fact that there's some cool stuff going on out there that I didn't know about, and maybe it's not as freaked as bad out there as I thought it would be. All right, so back to the questions here. So Jay's talking about risk and reward and stuff. And when you hear people say, I won't, GK, text me tomorrow, please. When you hear people say, our kids have a right to go to school in safety, people have a right to go to the mall in safety. You don't have that right. That's reality. That's the reality smash, the reality wrecking ball again. There is no such thing as perfect safety. And the idea that you have a right to safety is a first world problem that never existed before 20 years ago. You don't have a right to perfect safety. The world is not a safe place. You can make it safer, and you can certainly produce pockets that are extremely safe by human standards, but it's never perfectly safe. You can always step off a curb into a bus. You can stand on a curb, have a bus jump a curb and hit you. There is never, ever perfect safety. And if you start out from believing that, then you're going to be in miserable shape for the rest of your life. You don't have a right to perfect safety. You don't have a right to a life free of disease either. How can we let this disease kill, so many people? Well, that's the world we live in. That's welcome to planet Earth. There are microorganisms, and most of the time our immune systems, which are magnificent, just slaughter these bastard viruses by the trillions. But sometimes they get ahead of us, and people get sick. And my wife just got sick, and I got sick, real sick, with the unknown virus of unspecified origin a year and a half ago. And if it had killed me, it would have killed me. And I have no right to say, I have a right to be healthy. I have a right to be protected from... No, you don't. You don't have a right. So once you understand that life isn't fair, then you can at least start talking like an adult about it. When we talk about tragic deaths, every death is tragic. If I hear the word tragic one more time, I'm just going to scream, right? The tragic story of Kim Kardashian's marriage, that kind of thing. So you don't have a right to safety. So when people talk about things like shootings, they talk about things that they think are preventable. And it turns out that mass shootings are preventable because we went through virtually all of our history without them. They're a modern phenomenon. But they're not due to guns, because that's plainly obvious. Guns were available everywhere all the time. You could walk into a Sears and come out with an armload of guns, all the ammunition you could carry. Didn't need any ID, nothing. You just bought it. You bought it like you'd buy a pair of boots. When guns were everywhere and kids were playing with guns and guns were glorified in TV shows and on commercials, there were no mass shootings. And the more we demonize the gun and the more we make it about the gun, the more mass shootings we get. The guns haven't changed. What's changed is the destruction of the family and the ability to spot people going off the rails at dinner 3 years before they shoot up a school, rather than finding out after the fact that, yeah, my son was one of those kids in the basement building a bomb. Right? So you can't do a risk-reward calculation until you accept the fact that there is risk in everything. Even if you're the most careful person in the world, there are things you can't do anything about, you know? We were in Mexico. My wife's had a bunch of really miraculously close calls, in my opinion. And I'm not going to get into that, but they've been quite shocking. And we were in Mexico. She was standing under a palm tree. They don't have a lot of those in Siberia, so I took a picture of her, stood way back, took a picture of her. Next to the palm tree, she strikes an attractive, beautiful pose. I snapped the picture, and then 3 seconds later, while she's still standing there, this coconut falls out of the tree and misses her by about that much, just almost grazed her shoulder. For those of you not familiar with palm trees, coconut palms specifically, when you go to the supermarket and you see a coconut, every time you ever think of a coconut, oh, a coconut, little brown thing like this, about this big with little fibers all over it, you know, you crack it open, there's meat. Yeah, that's the actual coconut, but surrounding the coconut is this enormous husk, which is a son of a bitch to get through. I mean, you burn 400 calories just putting a hole in the husk, let alone taking it apart. Getting a coconut out of the husk is tough. Anyway, these things are decent-sized bombs. They're pretty heavy. You drop one like that onto somebody's head from a height of a tall coconut palm, you're very likely to kill them, right? Very likely. Numbers of people are killed every year by falling coconuts and things like that. It's not high among your list of things to be afraid of in this country, but nevertheless, they're there. We worry about shark attacks because most of us at least see the oceans. Some of us swim in the oceans. And I'm much more worried about a shark attack than I should be because I hate the sons of bitches. And even though this is extraordinarily politically incorrect, I know I'm supposed to respect them as the valuable part of the food chain that they are. And I get all that. I do. I really genuinely do. So I'm not saying I'm going to do this or that I should do this. I'm just saying I want to do this. See, there are things I want to do that I don't do because I know they're bad. I just want to do them. And what I want to do is I want to get in a big honking boat, like a destroyer or something, really. Something that's like, you're going to need a bigger boat. I want 2 orders of magnitude bigger. Then I want to just chum the water out there and just pour buckets of blood out there. And I want to sit on the edge of a U.S. Navy destroyer or whatever you got with a 50 cal. And I want to blow the living crap out of these things. I want to kill as many of them as I can, especially the great whites. I just like to just riddle them with bullets. I just like to turn them into mulch. Because I hate them. And I want to see that very much. I know it's not right. I know it's not bad. And I know it's bad. I know it's not fair. All that. I get it. I just want to do it, but I don't. I just think about the horror of it. Anyway, my point is I worry about shark attacks when I'm in the water, even though the chances are next to nothing. But the number of people who are killed by crocodiles is, I don't know if it's an order or two orders. Usually there's 1 or 2 fatal shark attacks a year. Something like 150, 200 people a year, I think, something like that, are killed every year by crocodiles. I don't worry about that because I don't see a lot of crocodiles. And this reminds me of, this is the hard part of, about being a conservative in this pop culture. So many of the people who I just that Dave Big Booty got it right. I need the Gowade. I need the gun that the A-10 is built around, and I want it on a gigantic pivot, right? And I want it perfectly balanced. And then I just want to take that Gow, that Avenger cannon, and I don't think it is the Avenger. You just take the Gow and just mulch the water. Just turn it pink. But I'm not so worried about crocodiles. Anyway, one of the tough things about being a conservative is you see and hear people in show business who you just love and adore. You just love them. And then they turn out to be like the biggest progressives ever. And you just want to go, oh, okay. So one of my favorite comics, one of the funniest guys in the world, I think, is John Mulvaney. He's just hilarious. He's very, if you haven't seen him, he's very clean cut, wears a suit and tie. He looks like he's 11 years old. And he had a line just came out just out of the blue. He said, growing up, it turns out that quicksand was not the threat that I thought it would be when I was a child. I just thought that was hilarious. I thought that was just absolutely hilarious. And a great example of this. Quicksand was not the threat I thought it would be growing up. It's different now than it was back then, but virtually every show you ever saw that was out in the wild, certainly in the jungle, number one killer is quicksand, right? You fall into that thing and boom. Turns out quicksand's not so much of a big threat. So anyway, to the whole risk and reward thing, if you're not ready to buy the fact that it exists, then you can't make the calculation. And that's, I think, your entire point, Jazer, is how do you can even say, well, now we have for a change, we have a flash of insight here. In Los Angeles, there are still a significant number. It's decreasing, I'm proud to say, every month, but still significant numbers of people here wear masks in LA. Even the state of California has declared this crisis over. But where the hell was I? So a number of people are still wearing masks. And these are people who are so risk obsessed. A lot of it is virtue signaling, I get all that. But what they're telling themselves is, I'm going to keep wearing the mask because Dr. Fauci said the mask protects us. Yes, nobody else is wearing the mask, but the virus is still out there, so I'm going to be safe. Now, that's what they tell themselves. The actual motivator of this is they like hiding behind the masks. They like not being, they like their facial expression not being seen. They like being behind a mask, and they like showing people that they're one of the good ones who do what the government tells them to do. But I see these people, and I see families with children, 4, 5, 6 years old, at the airport. Everybody, even in Los Angeles, everybody's just sitting there, and you see this family walks in, and it's like, oh, progressives, mom and dad, which itself is unusual, and 3 kids, and they're all wearing the the F9, I forget the name of the mask type. I'm glad I've forgotten it. They're wearing their professional masks, and I'm thinking to myself, first of all, what do these kids think about the fact that no one else is wearing the mask? Do they get teased about this? And secondly, kids need to see faces. Their parents are condemning them to 15 IQ points being gone and all kinds of behavioral issues because the parents are so terrified that the ambient level of risk has gone up microscopically. What a N95, thank you. Honestly, it's like, well, there's this virus out there now. Yeah, okay. I've been saying this since the beginning of the pandemic. Yes, there's a new way to die now. Exactly. It's not very likely. It's extremely unlikely. In fact, if the kids are kids, the chance is 0, right? And your chance as a person in your 30s or 40s is essentially 0 of dying from this, especially since you don't have any comorbidities. So I don't need to go into all that again. But what they're basically saying is we have to be careful now because life is more dangerous because this virus is out there. And I look at this and I say, okay, so you've got a 99.999% survival rate. That includes the people with the comorbidities at this age. And you're going to take away the ability to read faces because of that? Yes, there's a new virus out there, but you know what's not out there? Yellow fever's not out there. Smallpox isn't out there. Scarlet fever's not out there anymore. All of these things are gone. All these things used to slaughter millions and millions of people. Gone. And we act like we have a right to be, well, there's a disease we haven't eliminated yet. Outrageous. Those masks now, for me, are like the safety flags that come off the back of like ATVs. When you're doing the dunes, and I've done the dunes out in Oceanos, incredible dunes. And you can't see over the dunes, so they have these super tall flags that are just waving, telling you there's a vehicle there. Whenever I see the person wearing the mask, to me, it's like that's a warning flag, safety flag right there. These people are advertising that they're nuts. Richard Dark said, what if I told you you're actually harming your child and making them less safe by doing what you're doing? They would tell me to F off and mind my own business. They'd probably be right about that. And at the same time, they would know I was telling the truth. But they couldn't. It's like the residents of San Francisco. They can't square what's befronted their eyes with what they want to believe. So they go through life believing both of them. Or telling themselves, no. There's Dr. Fauci. We trust Fauci. Trust Fauci. Not only I had to wear one again when I took Natasha to the hospital. There's a law in California that says that everyone entering a medical facility has to wear a mask. Okay. All right. But even now, 3 years later, just wearing a mask for 3 or 4 minutes, it's like, how much carbon dioxide am I expected to rebreathe here, you know? I'm starting to get a little lightheaded just because I'm not getting any air. All right. Yeah, there are studies that are beginning to come out. We're going to see these studies for the rest of our lives and our children's lives as well. This COVID cohort, has suffered irreparable intellectual and emotional damage, not because of the virus, but because of the reaction to the virus by people who knew full well that they stood no chance, that these kids stood no chance at all of contracting this virus. They did it for political gain and for power, and they have condemned hundreds of millions of kids around the world to stunted lives because of their politics. That's the left. I'm going to do Marusha, and it's because it's the third time asking, and then I'm going home. I'm not going home. I'm staying here for another hour, posting the right angle, then I'm going home. Topic. I like that. It's got a real kind of a point counterpoint thing, you know. It's like we're not messing around now. No preamble. Topic. Invading Mexico. Third time asking. Helvetron to you as well. Bill, wondering what your thoughts are on Marjorie Taylor Greene and Dan Crenshaw putting forth a bill that would effectively declare war on the Mexican drug cartels. My libertarian side is highly anti-war, and that includes the war on drugs and various adventures in the Middle East and Asia. However, fentanyl is somewhat of a different animal. It seems like we're being invaded by a neighbor from our southern border, aided by China, that is intentionally murdering our citizens, and the corrupt Mexican government is either powerless to do anything about it or otherwise actively enables it because they're getting paid for it. It's coming from the same account that Joe Biden gets paid from. I know that even Thomas Jefferson made active war against the Barbary pirates who terrorized American merchant ships and was the closest we ever came to an anarchist POTUS, whereas collective defense of the homeland is a lawful constitutional act, and this declaration is being procedurally initiated by Congress rather than the POTUS, I'm inclined to allow it. What say you? Should we finally bite the bullet and clean up the mess in our backyard once and for all? Or is there a way to still deal with it that doesn't involve a military action? We should have been dealing with this as a military invasion for the last 10 years, if not longer. Once again, it's our fundamental decency, right? It's like we don't want to turn tanks and machine guns on people, especially unarmed people. We don't want to, and we won't. We shouldn't. We shouldn't machine gun down people who are crossing the border. That's genuinely what Nazis and fascists do, right? But I'm not talking about them. Those people need to be deterred with a wall so that the ones who really, really want to come to America are ready to spend 3 years or 4 years or 5 years doing the paperwork and come in legally like we had to do with my wife. So yes, so the people coming across looking for work and all the families and all the rest of it, you don't use military action against those people. Even today, you don't use military action against those people. And even knowing that, if you fire a couple rounds at a couple people, you probably won't have this kind of problem. You just don't do it. Okay, you just don't. We do not open fire on unarmed civilians, period. There's better ways to do that with the immigration problem. But the cartels are a whole nother story. I remember when Obama was president, we did a number of things about this. It enraged me more than anything. There were Mexican drug cartels operating inside the United States, 70, 80 miles inside the United States. And the response of the federal government to this invasion was to put up signs saying, warning, this area is dangerous. Do not enter this area because enemy drug cartels may be operating in the area. And I'm thinking, that's it? Well, of course that's it. That's the Obama solution to things. That's the progressive solution to things. You want to get rid of something? Put a sign up. No guns here. Gun-free zone. Can't shoot up this school. It's a gun-free zone. Okay. So there were signs. This actually happened where parts of the United States had signs from their federal government telling citizens of the country that they couldn't go into this part of their own country because of enemy armed combatants with an agenda, organized, are here, and they're ready to kill us if we get in their way. We have extraordinarily sophisticated imaging technology now. The southern border of the United States should be patrolled 24/7, 24/7 by a string, a chain of unmanned drones, constantly, right on the border, not in Mexican airspace, but a couple inches inside of ours, up and down the border, night and day, patrolling. And when we find a group of people who are heavily armed, especially if they're only heavily armed, then ideally we'd have, because you want a human in this loop somewhere, ideally you'd take some about to be retired Apaches or some old Cobras or something like that, attack helicopter. And you see an armed party coming into this country like that. You fly out to them. You get on the radio, on the loudspeaker, tell them to stop. You put a couple of rounds in front of their truck. And if they keep driving, then you put a hellfire on them. That's if you can confirm that they're armed combatants. If there are people with weapons coming into our country from another country, give them a warning shot. We're nice people. And if they don't stop, then put a hellfire on them. And if you do this 3 or 4 times, you're going to find the problem will get much less. If you do it 7 or 8 times, you're going to find the problem is over. If there was ever a justified military action, it is defending your own country against invasion. There's nothing that is more morally clear than that. Right? So, these are armed actors with malicious intent who are fully aware of what they're doing. They're not lost. They're not disoriented. They have already committed a number of murders if they're in one of these cartels. And I say have a nice flight. They do it because they can get away with it. And the more they get away with, the more they push. The more they push, the more they get away with. It's never going to end. Remember ISIS? All those people that they were sawing the heads off of once a week, or all of the people who they had lined up on the beach in orange jumpsuits, shot in the back of the head, or had their necks wrapped with det cord and decapitated to get pointed. Remember them? Remember how Barack Obama couldn't do anything about them? We warned the convoys. ISIS, we see you're making a convoy out there. We're required by the president to give you a 45-minute warning in order for you to get all of your Muslims out of the way and clear the area. So here comes your warning. In 45 minutes, we're going to open fire. Well, the convoy's gone. Well, what a surprise. This actually happened. I didn't make this up. And that's what happens when you've got a guy like Obama who is on their side. And then all of a sudden, you elect a president who's on our side, and he drops the largest non-nuclear weapon in the inventory on a remote target that didn't deserve that kind of weapon in terms of military necessity. He just said on his second day, here's the biggest bomb we have without going nuclear. Thermobaric weapon, killed, 30 of them or something. And that's the end of ISIS. It's the end of ISIS because when people realized that being part of ISIS was going to bear consequences, unpleasant ones, then they stopped joining ISIS. When there are no unpleasant consequences, they get to run around in a truck and fire machine guns and shoot civilians and rape women who, of course they want to be a part of it. They get celebrated, they get paid, they get to do all these things that they want to do. And then, of course, it keeps getting stronger and stronger and stronger. You kill a few of these people, then it alters their risk-reward calculations. I've been to CENTCOM in Tampa. I've been to the control room, the big board, the war room in CENTCOM, which is a pretty hot command these days. It was always a backwater. Now CENTCOM for 20 years, 30 years now has been where all the action is. And before they brought the visitors in, they had to sanitize the place, which means that they had to make sure there was no sensitive data on the screen and stuff. And when I was finished and saw how cool it was, they had to sanitize the place after I left as well. But basically, I'm looking at these people, and some woman who's a major, lieutenant colonel, brings out a tub of chicken salad or something, and she's having her lunch. There's some stuff on the screens. And the people who were there told me about what was required in order to launch a lethal strike. And it seemed extremely reasonable to me. Back in Obama's days, you had to tell them you're coming and give them warning. By the way, in Vietnam, these were the rules of engagement under McNamara and Johnson. The air rules of engagement I know a good deal about, but the ground rules of engagement said that you couldn't shoot at a guy who's running away. If he was running away, you had to aim for the legs. You couldn't open fire on a guy unless he opened fire on you first. You had all of this stuff, right? Just all of this stuff in an active war zone. Insane. But at CENTCOM, they basically said, we see a target. We have different teams that go to work. We have guys that identify the individuals. We have guys that connect them to other individuals. We have people that are specifically looking for unarmed civilians. And if we have a group of 9 terrorists in a van and 1 unarmed civilian, then we don't hit the van. I thought, good. That's the kind of country I want to belong to. But when there aren't any women in the van, they were killing thousands of these guys. And they needed it. I talked to people who said that they'd been in that very room where I was in. And all of this stuff you see from like Gulf War, the real blurry kind of, night vision stuff, or, just the, Gulf One kind of, phosphory kind of fuzzy image. He said, no. These predators, we get 4K high definition video. And he said, many people there said, there have been many times when we've been in there where we've had to expend the ordnance on a predator or a reaper or whatever, and we're waiting for the next replacement to come on station. And so we're up there. We can see everything. We've got no weapons. I said, we've seen these guys take women out and watch them rape them in front of our eyes. There's not a damn thing we can do about it. Nothing. We watch them rape people. We watch them murder people. Watch them cut people's heads off. We watched them decapitate them with swords. We've seen them torture people. And we have watched them from the sky and can't do anything about it until the new replacement comes online. And when that second drone comes online, then we can take these pictures, and it has to go to a general on the scene. They have to go. They have to prove. The burden of proof is on CENTCOM. It's not like, hey, these guys look suspicious. They got AKs. Let's blow them out of the water. No. CENTCOM has to prove, is this person there? Yes. Can you match the face? Yes. Is this a guy a known terrorist? Yes. Are there any civilians that are being hurt in this? No. If it's yes, then we don't shoot. On and on and on. Till finally, if everything's go, then off the rail it comes, and that's the end of that problem. It got to the point where they were telling me, they have nothing to prove to me. These are just regular Americans who just happen to be in uniform, saying, yeah, we're at the point now where they don't move in the daytime at all. And they don't move at night either. The only time they can ever leave the house is if it's overcast, solid overcast, low overcast. It doesn't happen too much in the Middle East because we know where they are and we're watching them all the time. And it's that's how the good guys work. That's what the good guys do. And we should be deploying that exact same technological ability and that exact same structural safeguards to make sure that there aren't any accidents that we regret. But if those things are in place and we have a clean shot and there's no question about it, then I say you take these drug cartel guys and you just put them into the atmosphere. Goodbye. Because you do that a couple times, it will encourage the others. I got a comment saying I need to check one comment section comment. What was it? Did you see somebody's comment about something or other? I think I saw it. Anybody remember what that was? Somebody was lecturing me and hounding me and harassing me about how's a comment I needed to take in the comment section. You got a few seconds to get that up there, whatever that was, kids. I'm trying to remember what it was and I don't. David Booty has a line in quotes. I don't know what it's from. Never heard it before, but the quote is, I said a warning shot. You shot him in the head. Yeah. Now his friends are warned. Yeah, vaporized terrorists will add to global warming. Well, you know what? In that case, then we'll just pay Al Gore some carbon credits and we'll offset that. I'll pay for that out of my own pocket. And by the way, yes, there's carbon added when you blow them up, but think about all the carbon dioxide that they won't be emitting for the rest of their lives. I think it's probably a net gain for the carbon cult. I'm running out of time and stuff here. I think somebody said I should go back and get this comment, and I didn't, and I'm just going to have to let it go because I'm done. Sorry. I have time to go home. I have time to stay here. Oh, about James O'Keefe. Okay. I remember that. I will indulge you. I shall indulge you. The pleasure of it. Oh, it's Henry Lumley. Well, I wish I'd realized that at the beginning. I've just done that automatically. Thank you again, Henry, for all the excellent work you do on our behalf, curating this whole thing. I'm very grateful and always have been. Bill, any thoughts on the return of James O'Keefe and his new O'Keefe Media Group and their newest video exposing the DNC online funding organization Act Blue as a money laundering scheme? If you've not seen it, to sum it up, people who made small and frequent donations to Act Blue have apparently been making hundreds of thousands of dollars of donations by making hundreds of small donations over the course of years. Some of these people had, according to official public records, made up to 10 donations per day for years. It really feels like a throwback to O'Keefe taking down Acorn. If James is successful at getting Act Blue at least audited, if not outright shut down for money laundering, it would be a huge blow to the DNC's funding mechanisms. James O'Keefe, I think, is the most important piece on the board. He's certainly one of the three most important pieces on the board, and I admire him. I don't know him well, but when we do meet, we're just on very good terms. I respect him enormously. The problem we're in today, Henry, is not that we can't find the evidence. That would be a genuine practical problem. We suspect somebody's doing something wrong. We don't have any evidence. Our problem today is we have so much evidence we don't know what to do with, and no one will prosecute the case. Because if you take over the Justice Department, you've taken over everything. Doesn't matter how many laws you break if they refuse to prosecute the laws. Hillary Clinton's committed tens of thousands of violations. And if you don't prosecute, then you might as well just wear a wristband that says, I can do anything. So it's not that. Now, if Donald Trump is reelected and the Republicans take the House and Senate and they do get serious about cleaning this thing out from the beginning, then this evidence will become very important. And James deserves credit for having done so much of this stuff. James O'Keefe would be 50 times more effective than he is if there was a Justice Department. If there was anybody willing to prosecute the crimes that he personally came up with the evidence, he and his organization came up with the evidence for, then O'Keefe he'd be frickin' Elliot Ness, which he is. He'd be Elliot Ness with for real. I did see what happened with James O'Keefe at Project Veritas is my own personal nightmare. To me, it's the worst thing that can happen. Which is why one way or another, we get these colonies off the ground. I'm just going to make it part of the conditions for whoever we do the deal with. We have to crowdfund it, whatever. I'm not saying we can't have oversight. I'm not saying we can't have a board. I'm not saying any of that stuff. If you have absolute power, you're going to be corrupted. I don't have any problem with that. But no one is going to take that away from me. It's not going to be taken away from me. For people to take away Veritas from O'Keefe is criminal. It's like taking Apple away from Steve Jobs. It's not like you just removed the CEO of a company. He is the company. He's the company. And I find that appalling. If somebody were to displace Jeremy Boring and Ben Shapiro at Daily Wire, I would consider that to be a crime. Just a crime. So, with all of that said, my admiration for him undimmed at all by any of this, enhanced by what happened to him and how he handled it. I will say, not that he's listening, but I will say as a friend who's in the biz, that I saw his video promo for the new organization. It's basically Project O'Keefe. I saw the video promo he did. I think it feels like it was influenced by the Daily Wire thing that Jeremy did for Jeremy's Razors. It has that kind of vibe to it. But I thought that it was not in James's best interest. Because Jeremy is essentially CEO of Daily Wire. He can afford to have fun with that and play with his image, be the God King and all the rest of it. And he played it for laughs. When I saw James O'Keefe in the car and door opens, the foot, you see the foot on the concrete and he's walking down and it's like, I don't know, James, I don't think this is good for you. I don't think it's a good look for you. I think you're much too important and too serious for this, and I don't like the name either, frankly. This is my perspective. That's all it is. But O'Keefe Media Group is... here's the paradox. Project Veritas was James O'Keefe. It was him. It was his and it was him. He was Project Veritas. But if you name the replacement the O'Keefe Media Group, you've kind of broken the spell. Going back to the Elliot Ness thing, it'd be like if the FBI, the real FBI back in the day, was called Elliot Ness's, investigative agency. It's like your target is something bigger than that. Honest to God, if it had been me, I would have named it the Veritas Project. That's what I would have done. Oh, Marisha points out O'Keefe Media Group is OMG. Oh my God. I don't think it's going to affect him. I know that my support and support of everybody I know, and I know some big donors of his. There's no question that it's O'Keefe. Somebody asked me if I wanted to tweet something that Veritas put out, and because I have social media people to handle these things. And I said, was it put out by Veritas or by O'Keefe? I said, Veritas. I said, I'm not touching it. I don't want anything to do with them. You can all just do your little power play. Fantastic. You want to have an employee who has a conniption fit about cookies or something, and you're going to throw this guy out of his own organization? Okay. He won't make that mistake again. Off you go. Let's not forget that Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro and Jeremy Boring didn't go immediately into Daily Wire. They went to Truth Revolt. They created Truth Revolt for David Horowitz's organization and turned it into a monster for 9-10 months. I did a bunch of firewalls for them. And then there was a power play, and then they got ousted, and so they finally second time, they said, well, we're not going to get ousted again, so they created Daily Wire out of thin air, and they turned it into what Truth Revolt was in about 2 or 3 months, and they never looked back. The company's easily worth $500 million today. It's easily a $500 million company today. That's just great. And if somebody were to if there was be a board move or something like that, take Daily Wire away from Jeremy and Ben, then I just think that's evil. I'm not saying that Ben and Jeremy can't do anything wrong, and like most organizations, chances are good that over time it'll get fossilized. But he wrote it up. He can write it down. He's going to live much long. His company's going to live a lot longer than he is. And and you know, that's just how I feel about it. I don't feel that way about, I almost said McDonald's, but Ray Kroc was McDonald's, right? Um, I don't feel that way about the Aetna Insurance Company. Right? You fire the executive in charge of Aetna, then you get another executive. That's fine. But that's a businessman in a role. He's the product. James O'Keefe is the product, and Jeremy and Ben are the product. And so there you go. Anyway, you got your miserable 3 hours of flesh from me, you horrible vampires. Uh, Actually, it's great to see everybody. Thanks again for being here, all of you. We actually got to 300 plus members in YouTube there for a while. That was kind of fun. And yeah, and the show's made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com who keep hanging on here. I guess we continue to slowly bleed off members as I try to find something to do that'll break through the the cap of views that I used to get in an hour. Now that's the maximum. So I'm working on that, and to be honest with you, I've actually taken a little bit of time just to decompress a little bit. So anyway, for the members who are members and paying for all this, we're very grateful as always, and we would encourage you to become one of them if you're not. I am going to do Major Matt. I'm going to do it. Thank you for all of you who've been long-time members and short-time members and all the rest of it. Thank you again for all the support. As always, thank you for the very kind comments about the Stratosphere Lounge. And I'm trying to get my little thingy-doody right here. Okay, yeah, I'll see you.